We are American.
We're on the shoulder.
Let's go.
Ran over something. What do they call them little shells, honey, from the desert?
Okay, folks, I see 6 o'clock.
That live in the desert down in Texas.
I'd like to call this June 4, 2024 meeting of the Henderson City County Planning Commission to order. I want to welcome everybody. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate your interest and your assistance. Excuse me. Can anybody hear me?
No.
My bad. I'd like to call this June 4, 2024 meeting of the Henderson City County Planning Commission to order. I want to thank you for coming. Welcome. We need your help. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Thank you. David Dixon.
Here.
Kevin Richard.
Here.
Bobby Jarrett.
Here.
Mac Arnold.
Here.
XR Royster.
Here.
Dickie Johnson.
Here.
Gary Gibson.
Here.
Gray Hodge.
Here.
Stacy Ditton.
Here.
Kevin Herron. Frank Boyette.
Here.
Heather Tays.
Here.
Very good. Do we have a quorum?
We do.
Thank you. First off, I got some housekeeping items I'd like to bring up. We've got 2 different ordinances to consider tonight that might require quite a bit of input. We also have some other items that would affect perhaps a smaller number of people. I'd like to propose a reordering of the agenda, making it more convenient for those who don't want to sit around and talk about the larger issues. Anyway, I would propose that the first item we take up would be the site plan for the property on 41 North. Then we would deal with rezoning 1165, then rezoning 1166. Then we would take up the city's medical cannabis ordinance. And then we would take up the county's battery energy storage system ordinance. I'll entertain a motion to that effect if that meets with anybody's approval.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of reordering the agenda as presented, say yes.
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 Any opposed? Very good, we will do that. Thank you. The other item I want to deal with here is putting into place some rules governing testimony tonight. These are the same rules we've used often when we expect a large group or we expect some extended testimony. I will read the proposal and then ask for the commission's approval. If the Henderson State County Planning Commission regularly scheduled meeting for 6 o'clock p.m. Tuesday, June 4, 2024 has not been sooner concluded and adjourned, it will stop at 9 p.m. and by motion and vote of the Planning Commission be continued and reconvened virtually the following night, Wednesday, June 5, 2024 at 6 p.m. and stop at 9 p.m. and by motion and vote of the Planning Commission be continued and reconvened at 6 p.m., stop at 9 p.m. from night to night thereafter until finished. The Planning Commission very much wants to hear all evidence, comments, positions, suggestions, and questions, collectively referred to as comments. All comments will be at the end after all amended sections have been presented by staff unless the chairman elects otherwise or otherwise changed by vote of the Planning Commission. There will be no time limit on attorneys, and attorneys will present and comment first. We will begin with attorneys, then non-attorneys. Attorneys may ask questions directly. Questions from non-attorneys must be presented to the chairman, either verbally or in writing, along with who the question is to be directed to, and the chairman will ask the question. That is, non-attorneys may not ask questions directly. Each non-attorney will initially be given 3 minutes. After each non-attorney has had 3 minutes, if there are non-attorneys who would like additional time, an additional 3 minutes will be given, and this procedure will be repeated until everyone has had an opportunity to present all they desire to present. Speakers are asked not to repeat something another speaker has said, but may come forward on the platform and say they agree with one or more other speakers and present anything new they may have. Planning commissioners may comment and ask questions at any time. The chairman will ask for a motion, second, discussion, and vote to approve or change the rules at the beginning of the public hearing, which I do so now.
Motion to approve these rules.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Very good. Thank you all. So we will move to the first item then, which would be the site plan on the Thomas Sawyer property site plan on US 41 North. Ms. Marks, I think.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, the Thomas Sawyer site plan submitted by Thomas Sawyer for the property located in Henderson County at 3131 Highway 41 North, being parcel ID number 64D-15. The applicant is requesting site plan approval. So if you will look, since we're jumping around a bit, to page 52 in your packet, that is the site plan that we are talking about here. The property that we are referring to is outlined here in the lime green. You will see that that is up close to the bridge there. So on the site plan, he is requesting to locate storage buildings or yard barns for sale there. So that would be what they're going to use there. It looks blue on here, but it is like a hatched line through here. These blue lines are where they plan to actually have the yard barns stored on this piece of property. The entrance is an existing entrance onto 41 North. The placement of the yard barns is in the floodplain, but we have been in contact with Kentucky Division of Water, and that is not something that they regulate, the placement of temporary structures there in that. We have received approvals from all the technical advisors on this site plan, so staff does offer a favorable recommendation. The applicant, as well as their agent, are here if you guys have further questions on this one.
Thank you. Commission have any questions for staff?
Nope.
Would the commission like to hear from the applicant? Would the applicant or their representative like to address the commission? No questions? No comments? Anyone else have a comment on this matter? I'll entertain a motion in regard to this proposed site plan.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a motion that we approve the Thomas Sawyer property site plan submitted by Thomas Sawyer for the property located in Henderson County at 3131 Highway 41 North, PID number 64D-15.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Kevin Richard.
Yes.
Bobby Jarrett.
Yes.
Mac Arnold.
Yes.
XR Royster.
Yes.
Dickie Johnson.
Yes.
Gary Gibson.
Yes.
Gray Hodge.
Yes.
Stacy Denton.
Yes.
Frank Boyette.
Yes.
Heather Tays.
Yes.
Very good. Motion passes. Moving along, I'll entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of entering public hearing, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? We are now in public hearing. First item on the public hearing agenda is approval of the May 7, 2024 minutes. Anybody would like to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes, say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. We move on to rezoning 1165. I think, Ms. Marks, that's going to be you as well?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rezoning 1165, assignment of zoning classification in conjunction with annexation. The City of Henderson has requested that the Planning Commission hold a public hearing recommending a zoning classification and amending the comprehensive plan for the property located in Henderson County at 2144 Old Gordon Road, being parcel ID number 46-13, containing approximately .388 acres for the subject area. The subject area is currently zoned County Single Family Residential R1, and staff is recommending a City Heavy Industrial District M2 zoning classification for the subject area. So if you will flip to pages around 34-ish in your packet there, you will see what we are referring to. This is a pretty zoomed out version, but we're actually only referring to this small piece here. If you all will remember, back in April, I believe, we heard an annexation request for this piece right here. I believe it was titled the Bentley Farm at that time for that. They did request an annexation with the zoning classification of heavy industrial district for that piece there. And I'm not sure if it was a clerical error, Dawn can maybe correct me, but this parcel ID was left off on that request when it was originally sent to the county. So we had to, because of statute requirements for how many days we have to notify them, we had to wait to do this one later.
Yeah, when the property was
Excuse
surveyed.
me, I need your name, please.
Hi, Dawn Kelsey, City Attorney for City of Henderson.
Your address.
222 First Street.
And do-
When,
Excuse me.
Doug,
Excuse me, Don. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very good, thank you.
When Doug had this survey, we found out that there was a piece that was not included in our original description, and so that's where that one piece came out of.
Okay, very good, thank you.
So part of that is that this piece will be consolidated into this part that we heard in April. So their request, of course, is to rezone to the city heavy industrial district for that consolidation there. This is a little bit closer on the exhibit. You can see there we're referring to this piece here. And then the piece that we did 46-10 is this section back here in April. Like Dawn said, she's here, Doug's here to answer questions if you all have them, but I do have findings of fact to read into the record once questions are completed.
Okay, anybody have any questions for staff? Any questions for the city attorney? Anyone else here this evening that'd like to speak in favor of this rezoning? Anyone here this evening who might have a question about this or be opposed? I'm hearing no response. Might you share your findings of fact then, please?
Yes. So rezoning 1165, assignment of zoning classification in conjunction with annexation Bentley Farm. The city of Henderson has requested that the planning commission hold a public hearing recommending a zoning classification and amending the comprehensive plan for the property located in Henderson County at 2144 Old Corden Road, being parcel ID number 46-13, containing approximately .388 of an acre for the subject area. The subject area is currently zoned county single-family residential R1, and staff is recommending a city heavy industrial district M2 zoning classification for the subject area. A proposed motion would be that I move that the Planning Commission recommends that the city of Henderson assigns a city heavy industrial district M2 zoning classification to this subject parcel, and that the comprehensive plan be amended to include this area in the city zoning map when it is annexed into the city, and if and when the city assigns a zoning classification following applicable laws, that such zoning classification be appropriately shown in the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. And I'll leave the motion open for other members of the Planning Commission to add findings of fact in support of this motion, because the recommended heavy industrial district M2 zoning classification is not in agreement with the future land use map of the comprehensive plan, that the current zoning is inappropriate and the proposed zoning is appropriate because, one, it guides industrial growth to existing industrial areas and ensures they are compatible with the surrounding uses and are served by adequate public facilities and services. Two, encourages the use of existing industrial parks and riverport facilities. Three, plan for and enables readily available economic and industrial development land to meet the needs for jobs and enable infill and redevelopment that creates jobs where people live. 4, guide design and improvements of development along major traffic corridors to maintain the community character and create gateways. And 5, the zone change request is to consolidate this parcel to an existing M2 parcel.
Thank you. Commission have any further questions for staff or anyone else? Anyone else like to add anything to this discussion?
Well, I'm a little concerned about having heavy industrial right smack dab next to residential. And I'm wondering, is this gonna come back later where we can ameliorate that?
Commissioner Boyette, yes. When this property is developed in an industrial nature, it will come back to the Planning Commission with a site plan. So that way we can address screening, lighting, things of that nature at that point.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions? Anyone else like to add anything?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to adopt the proposed motion and finding of fact as my final motion to recommend approval of rezoning 1165.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
It's not a rezoning, you're recommending the assignment.
Assignment.
Rezoning assignment. I will edit my motion to be an approval of the rezoning assignment classification by the city of Henderson.
Yeah, I second that.
Pardon me for interrupting.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate
That's
you
okay, I
keeping us straight.
misstated it several times myself. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Heather Tays.
Yes.
Frank Boyette.
Yes.
Stacy Denton.
Yes.
Gray Hodge.
Yes.
Gary Gibson.
Yes.
Dickie Johnson.
Yes.
XR Royster.
Yes.
Mac Arnold.
Yes.
Bobby Jarrett.
Yes.
Kevin Richards.
Yes.
Very good, motion passes. We're moving on to rezoning 1166. Mr. Bishop, you're gonna help us with that.
Yes, sir. This is submitted by Stephen and Marlene Stillwell for the property in Henderson County at 15679 Highway 351, being parcel ID number 107-40, containing 13,427 square feet. The applicants are requesting a zoning change map amendment from single-family residential to agricultural. When you notice on the map, I believe it's page 46 in your packet, the applicant owns two pieces of property. They own the area that we're currently looking at, which is highlighted in the yellowish green, and they own the property directly adjacent to it to the east, I believe. They are wanting to consolidate the properties, and as you can see, the zonings are different. So in order to consolidate the property, we have to go through the rezoning process. Staff would recommend approval, and I have proposed findings of fact for your consideration.
Which parcel are we dealing with? What's outlined in yellow there?
That is the subject parcel.
And it would be, end up joined to the other yellow?
I believe it will be
portion?
joined to the property to the east.
Okay,
So then, just to clarify, the remainder that is in yellow that shows a house, that's a different property owner?
Correct. Different parcel, different property.
okay, very good, thank you. Any questions for staff in regard to this rezoning? Any questions for the applicant? Is the applicant here? Do we have questions for the applicant? Would you like to address the commission if you wish? Okay. Anyone else here this evening that'd like to speak in favor of rezoning 1166? Anyone have questions about this action? No one wants to add anything either way? I'll entertain a motion in regard to rezoning 1166. Well, we need the findings of fact. Let's do that.
Proposed motions and findings of fact for rezoning 1166 submitted by Stephen and Marlene Stillwell for the property located in Henderson County at 15679 Highway 351, being parcel ID number 107-40, containing 13,427 square feet. The applicants are requesting the zoning change map amendment from single-family residential to agricultural. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the Henderson County Fiscal Court, the county, approve rezoning application 1166, changing the zoning classification from single-family residential, R1, to agricultural district, ag, for the subject property. I'll leave the motion open for other members of the Planning Commission to add findings of fact in support of this motion because although the proposed zoning is not in agreement with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan, the existing zoning is inappropriate and the proposed zoning is appropriate because the surrounding properties are zoned of a similar nature. The rezoning will not negatively affect the parcels in the area. The parcel is being rezoned to consolidate to an adjoining parcel, and the rezoning will be contingent upon approval of the consolidation plan.
Thank you. Any further questions from the commission? Anyone else have anything else on this? I'll entertain a motion in regard to rezoning 1166.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the Henderson County Fiscal Court approve the rezoning application number 1166 and the proposed motion of facts of finding read into the record. Mr. Bishop.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Kevin Richards.
Yes.
Bobby Jarrett.
Yes.
Mac Arnold.
Yes.
XR Royster. Dickie Johnson.
Yes.
Gary Gibson.
Yes.
Gray Hodge.
Yes.
Stacy Denton.
Yes.
Frank Boyette.
Yes.
Heather Tays.
Yes.
Very good. Motion passes. We are now going to move on to a proposed amendment to the city's zoning text having to do with the production, cultivation, processing, and sale of medical cannabis. Not sure I'd ever say that. So how can you help us?
Mr. Chairman and Planning Commission, thank you for having us here tonight. Before we started, I kind of want to give you a little background on how we developed these proposed zoning ordinances. We had a work group that began in February looking at this. Our work group was Mr. Bishop, Ms. Marks, with a lot of support from Chris Raymer through the GIS program, Steve Davis, Teresa Ritchie, who's my assistant, myself, and then the mayor and the city manager gave us guidance, and we touched on with them as we were going through this process. So I did want to let you know that this was a lot of hard work and how much we appreciate the work that Planning Commission staff put into making this possible for us. The other thing I wanted to say is that this was presented to the commission the first meeting in May. The commission has indicated that they do want to allow medical cannabis in Henderson, the medical cannabis businesses in the Henderson. Oh, we'll get started. In 2023, Senate Bill 47 was passed, which allows medical cannabis to be available to individuals who qualify for a medical cannabis card starting on January 1st, 2025. At that point, we had been told that regulations would be coming out at the end of last year, and so we were waiting, knowing that we had another year to get this ready. Well, that year the timeline got condensed, and that's one reason we're here tonight. But in order to be a medical card holder, you have to have a qualifying medical condition. That would be any form of cancer, regardless of stage, chronic or debilitating pain, epilepsy or seizure disorder, multiple sclerosis or spasticity, chronic nausea or cyclical nausea that hasn't been able to be treated with other programs, post-traumatic stress disorder, or any other medical condition or disease that the Kentucky Center for Cannabis believes would be treated by medical cannabis and has proven scientific methods behind that.
Would that include glaucoma?
That would be up to that board. In order to have a medical cannabis card, you have to be a resident of Kentucky. Now, a lot of people thought that Indiana residents, because Indiana does not currently have medical cannabis, that they would come get a medical card and purchase medical cannabis in Kentucky. However, they will not be eligible. You have to be a resident of Kentucky. You have to be 18 years of age, or you have to have an assigned caregiver. So that would be for children who have a parent or guardian who are suffering with a condition that they would qualify for a medical card. You cannot be convicted of a disqualifying felony offense. You have to have written certification from a medical practitioner indicating the diagnosis and that it would be treatable with medical cannabis, but the practitioner is not the person that gives the card. The state will issue those cards. So the state will go through and make sure that the person who is receiving the card does meet all the qualifications. There are restrictions on card holders.
Excuse me, Don,
Yeah,
just go
sure.
back real
Yes, sir.
quick. What type of disqualifying offenses are we talking about?
We're going to
here?
get there. I've got a whole slide
Thank
on it.
Thank you.
Medical card holders may not operate vehicles or machineries while under the influence of medical cannabis. They cannot keep medical cannabis in arm's reach while operating machinery. They cannot possess it or use it on school property unless it's administered by a school nurse. It cannot be possessed at any correctional facilities or on any federal property. It cannot be smoked. Our medical cannabis law will not allow marijuana in the form that it would be smoked. You can't grow your own medical cannabis without a medical cannabis license. You can't use medical cannabis if you're not a registered qualified patient or a visiting qualified patient. If you wonder what a visiting qualified patient is, that would be a patient who has a medical card from their state. For us, the surrounding states that we might have visiting patients would be Illinois, Ohio is coming online, West Virginia, and Missouri. So if you happen to be visiting someone in Kentucky and you have a medical card from Missouri, you could purchase medical cannabis here. But again, Indiana residents would not qualify under that. And you cannot use or consume medical cannabis by vaping on any form of public transportation, in any public place, or any place of public accommodation or amusement. So the way that the law was written, they really wrote it so each locality would have the option of deciding for their community whether to allow medical cannabis or not. So a city or a county can prohibit all cannabis business operations in its territory through the passage of an ordinance, or a commission or a fiscal court could enact a resolution placing it on the ballot for the next general election. If the city or if the county, for instance, should take no action, then the way the law works is it defaults to you can have medical cannabis in your community. So if you don't do anything, if a city decides not to take any action, then after January 1st, 2025, medical cannabis businesses will be allowed to be operating in that community.
So that's why we're here.
Well, we're here because of an accelerated timeline, but we'll get there in just a second. If the county should prohibit cannabis business operation, then a city can, like our city commission, can approve cannabis operations in the city limit. So, for instance, if fiscal court said we do not want medical cannabis, the city of Corrigan, the city of Henderson can still go pass an ordinance and allow it, or we can do the same thing and put it on a ballot. So we still have those options whether the county does that or not. With the local option, the way that the law is written, a city may enact ordinances to regulate it more, but it can't be less restrictive. And we can regulate it as to time, place, or manner. So really zoning. Zoning and times of operation is really what we're allowed to allowed to do as a city. We're also allowed to establish a local fee to compensate the city for any additional costs caused by the operation of a medical cannabis business in our territory. The city will probably do that, but we have not discussed what that looks like yet. We've only discussed with the city commission what zoning might be possible for this.
What costs do you envision occurring?
That's one reason we haven't researched that yet,
Okay.
Frank. So that wouldn't come before you all, that would be a city commission thing. And that's one reason we have not talked about that yet, because we haven't finished that research. Now, the local option deadline is if a city has not prohibited medical cannabis before January 1st, or if a city has not enacted zoning ordinances and by January 1st, and a business then gets a license from the state for the city of Henderson, we can't change our minds after that. So one of the reasons we really want to put our zoning in place is so that we are ready to roll, and that we don't have a business go somewhere that we don't think that they're appropriately zoned. So we need to take action prior to January 1st. But what happened, I guess that went backwards. Oh, you have the old one. The desktop has the new one. That's fine. I can do this. So what happened this session is two bills got introduced that accelerated the timeline for medical cannabis. Medical cannabis that's sown in Kentucky has to be produced in Kentucky. So the start date for this was January 1st. All licenses were going to come out January 1st. Well, you can't really buy medical cannabis on January 1st if you don't have a license to grow it or produce it. So what happened during this legislative session was they accelerated the timeline and said the first set of licenses will happen, the licensing window will open July 1st. And that's why we're here. Because we want to be ready on July 1st with our zoning ordinances. So when those first set of licenses come out, and the first licensing window is July 1st to August 31st. So if you want to open a dispensary, you will, and you want to be one of the first ones to do it, you will file for your license during the period of July 1st and August 31st.
Now, is that set out by the state,
Yes,
that timeline?
yes, that's not us. And that's why we accelerated what we were doing. That was not something that we had been told. It's just something that happened in this session. And so we picked up very quickly and started working, and that's why our work group worked so hard. So, one of the things that happened when the governor signed that we were very surprised about, was the number of licenses were very limited that they are going to issue to begin with. They are only going to give 10 Tier 1 cultivator licenses, and we'll get into what those are in a minute. 4 Tier 2 cultivator licenses, 2 Tier 3 licenses, 10 processor license, no producers, but the big one that shocked us all, there are only going to be 48 dispensary licenses issued.
So that,
Yeah.
that's fewer than one per county.
Yes, we're gonna get there. Very good. So, what they did is they established 11 regions. So here are the regions that they established in April. We are with our grad. We're with our grad people. We're one of 7. And they are going to give 4 licenses per region, except for Louisville and Lexington. They will get more. But there will only be 4 licenses per region and only 1 dispensary license per county. So, that means if a dispensary license goes in Corden, that's the only dispensary that will be located in Henderson County. So, that's another reason that we are on an accelerated path, is we need to be ready to go by July 1st. If we've got people who are interested in opening dispensaries, they'll want to know what the zoning and whether the city is going to allow it. So, if there are more than 4, or if there's more than 1 dispensary license per, let's say, Henderson, the city of Henderson, the way that the governor's office has set it up is they're having the Kentucky Lottery Corporation handle a lottery for these. And unlike lotteries and other things where you, the state will look at maybe the qualifications or look at some other things, this is just going to be a straight lottery. So, after August 31st, if there are more than 1 dispensary license per, let's say, Henderson, then this will be how it is decided by the Kentucky Lottery Corporation. So, the regional limitations are only for dispensaries. For the other licenses, there's no regional restriction.
I'm sorry, this lottery will apply to the 7 counties in the grad.
Right. Well, it'll apply to all, so any of these.
So the decision will not be based in any way on population,
Nope. That's our understanding.
geographical location.
Nope, that's our understanding.
It could be land in any rural area or
We can
town,
have
anywhere.
we may have 4 dispensaries in 11, in Region 11, that's where we are. But there'll only be 1 dispensary per county.
And
Now,
it won't be based on the populations of counties.
that is our understanding.
Okay.
Now, could that change based on when they get those? Maybe, but right now what we've been told is it's just gonna be pure, odds, or just luck of the draw, yeah.
With that kind of, it sounds like they're gonna have a monopoly, the dispensaries. And I'm wondering, is the state gonna regulate the prices, or does that come down to local authorities, or what?
We will not have any control over the prices, that will go through the state.
Okay.
So that is not one thing that we're allowed to control. So, and what Brian and I'll tell you in a few minutes are the phone calls that we've been getting. In fact, I had a phone call today on this. Additional state regulations on all medical cannabis business are: the state law prohibits medical cannabis businesses from being placed within 1,000 feet of an existing elementary school or secondary school or any certified daycare center. I do want to say this is something that we disagree with, and so we wrote our zoning ordinance to make it clear. The law says any existing school, any existing elementary or secondary school. The state regulators are just going to look at KDE schools, and those are schools that receive funding from Kentucky Department of Education. We disagree with that. We don't think that's what it's clearly not what the law says. The law is very clear. We have spoken with our state legislators to let them know that we disagree with that, but we are allowed to make it clear in our ordinances that it's any and all schools. We do have 4 religious schools in the city limits that do not receive KDE funding, but the public policy would be the same whether you're a KDE funding school or you're not a KDE funding school. All businesses must be licensed by the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and any employee must be 21 years of age and cannot be convicted of a disqualifying felony. So we're getting back to what our chairman asked. What is a disqualifying felony for either employees or for medical card holders? A felony that would classify the person as a violent offender, or a felony of a state or federal controlled substance law that was classified as a felony where the person was convicted, unless they have fulfilled their incarceration or supervised release more than 5 years ago. So if the felony is more than 5 years, if you've served your time more than 5 years, then that comes off. Or if the offense would not be an offense if this law were in place. So those are the disqualifying felony, Chairman, not only for employees but also for cardholders. You had asked earlier. So we'll go through the businesses, what the 5 medical cannabis businesses are. The first one is a cultivator. A cultivator are those people who will grow either the plant to be used or for seed. Now, by state regulation, the cultivation of these plants have to be in an enclosed locked facility. So you won't be driving down Highway 60 and see medical plants just growing. From our research, most of these plants are actually grown in grow houses. That way the water and the light is all controlled. So these are really operations that are they look like just warehouses almost. And they grow them in these grow houses. So you can have them in greenhouses, but the biggest thing is they want to be grown in controlled environment so that they have the best return, So you have to be 21 years to work there. You have to have security in place. There are different tiers. We did not put anything in our regulations changing the way that we treated the tiers, because what we learned is almost every tier is grown in a grow house. So this is how medical cannabis is grown. They are large consumers of water and of power. One thing we learned. Each plant takes about 6 gallons of water a week in these grow houses. So that's just in case you want to go into business. Cannabis dispensaries, these have to be in a business that only sells medical marijuana. A lot of people thought that you would be able to put this, like, for instance, in a Walgreens or a Rite Aid. These are standalone businesses. They are only allowed to sell medical cannabis accessory, educational materials, or branded merchandise for that particular business. They have to run 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., but cities or counties can make that time shorter. They have to have video surveillance, the front and the back of the business. They can not have anyone 18 years or older. They can have delivery service, and they can have drive-through windows, in case you're looking for a second job. A cannabis producer is just that entity that takes the plant and turns it into usable medical cannabis. The only other, they have the exact same regulations as grow houses, as to the age of the workers, as to video surveillance, as to locked facilities. The one thing that they also have are additional regulations on where you go in and out with trucking. They have to have more security in those areas. A cannabis producer is a cultivator and a processor together. These are very large operations. When I watched the governor's task force that was discussing this, the decision was made that no producer licenses would be issued to begin with. These are large operations that come in from out of state generally, and the governor really wanted to, or the governor's task force wanted to encourage Kentucky producers, Kentucky farmers on this. So at this time, no producer's licenses will be issued in the initial window of licenses. The final one is just a laboratory. They're called safety compliance facilities, but in essence, they're a lab. And they do the testing for the THC levels and the purity levels. The only interesting thing is it has to be independent from other cannabis business types. So you can't be a cultivator or a dispenser and also own any interest in the lab. The lab has to be purely independent. With that in mind, we produced our proposed ordinances. I will tell you, the first thing we did is we did definitions for each of the 4 main businesses, and we took the state regulations and the statute. That way, if those definitions should update, they will automatically update through ours. So we reference the state and the applicable regulations on this. And so that would be a change to section 2.01. So cannabis cultivator, cannabis dispensary, cannabis processor, and a cannabis producer. The second one, and probably the one of most interest to you all, is where we are placing cannabis dispensaries. When we looked at this, we were lucky that Chris is so good on GIS. What we did is we took the buffer zones and we placed them in all of our commercial areas. So there were only 2 addresses in the central business district where you could be outside the buffer zone. Really what happened is in any commercial area, it kind of told us where we were going to place it. It really fell to highway commercial in our zoning for dispensaries, because most of the other commercial zones in Henderson whether it be the HIP zone, whether it be the gateway zone, whether it be the CBD, they all almost exclusively were in those 1,000 feet buffers. So with that, we looked at highway commercial. Now that we know that there's only going to be possibly one dispensary, that's very important for us, because when we researched through Illinois and when we researched through Michigan, the parking is incredible. The need for parking is very high for these when you have a limited number. And if you think about, if there's only 4 dispensaries in our region, there's going to be a lot of traffic in these areas. So we feel very comfortable with our designation for highway commercial. As I told you earlier, we require that they cannot be within 1,000 feet of any school, elementary school or secondary school. And if you notice, we have any or all existing elementary school or secondary school to make sure that we cover those religious schools that the state may not count, but we feel like need to be counted.
No, wait a minute. Now,
Yeah.
did I
Mhm.
hear something that I may not have? Didn't you say registered daycare centers too?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
So
You didn't include that
it's on
on,
there.
I know, but in
I'm
your
sorry, all existing
presentation.
elementary or secondary or daycare centers. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right.
It shall not be located within 1 mile of another cannabis dispensary. We're trying to spread those out for the traffic issues. Shall not be placed next to any residential structure. And then our mayor was very concerned about the advertising on this and children. And so we actually found the New York rules on advertising and adopted those. But I will tell you that the state rules are pretty tight as well on how these cannabis dispensaries can display their signs. For our other businesses where we have grow houses or producers, our suggestion would be to place it in light industrial, including our laboratories are already allowed in light industrial, so all our change would be to include the language including medical cannabis safety compliance facilities, cannabis cultivators, cannabis processors, and cannabis producers. And then we would also believe that the appropriate zoning in heavy industrial would also be for cannabis cultivators, processors, or producers. And that would be in section 2402. The final area that we would suggest is for our cannabis cultivators to be allowed in agricultural districts. As you all know, we have limited agricultural districts left in the city limits. Chris counted those out for us. I think there's 11. So the chances of one being placed there, but we wanted to give them that opportunity. So those are our suggestions for the zoning ordinances.
You mentioned section 24.
Yes. Yes.
I don't
For
see
heavy
that.
industrial.
I don't see that in the document. Goes from section 23.02 to
Right.
section 25.02.
The city zoning ordinance allows things to be compounded, so it'll say in M2 automatically, whatever is a permitted use in M1 is a permitted use in M2. So that's why it's not technically a change to the printed ordinance. So it will say
It
that
stacks.
it's a stacking ordinance, so the allowable in M1, it'll then say under M2, it'll say all permitted uses in M1 are allowable in M2.
Okay. Do you have a map that shows with the areas that you're,
I do not
Highway
have a map
commercial
on
and-
here. I don't have a map on here. You have this. So really you're looking at the Highway 41 strip. You're looking at part of Highway 60. You're looking at a small portion, and I can never think of what old 41's name was. 2084. I can never think
should
of
be
that.
old 41.
And there's a portion of 2084 in which is highway commercial. So you're really looking at parts of Green Street, the strip, and 2084. We counted out, poor Chris, I would call him and he would have to redo it, but he counted out, and we, with the way that our dispensary licenses are set up, we could have 5 dispensaries eventually with the 1 mile, buffer. What we said to the commission when we presented it to the commission, we felt like we should start tight and see how this goes. I mean, this is a whole new territory for us, but in 5 years, if we feel like we need to add more dispensary, we could look at changing this. But I will tell you that the 1,000-foot buffer zone really kind of set where these dispensaries could fit in Henderson. And with the limited number of dispensary licenses that are going to be issued, there will not, the parking is going to be very difficult. So even if you did want to try to get it into the CBD cannot accommodate the need for parking on these initial dispensaries.
So it sounds like you expect the 1 per county limitation to be expanded as time goes by.
I think my understanding of the state is they're going to issue the initial licenses and see how it goes.
Okay.
And then eventually, if they find that there's a need to expand it. I will tell you that we have been receiving, well, I've had 6 phone calls in the last week and a half.
These are from
Site selectors.
dispensaries.
These are from site selectors that help dispensaries find the site and prepare their license application.
That was my question. Have you gotten any calls from
Yes.
cultivators, cultivators, or producers?
No, we have not. We have not. But we have received, and I will tell you that Chris and Brian and Jennifer have worked on an Excel spreadsheet that show possible addresses that would be available if the zoning regulation would go forward. That site selectors are looking at.
Should your concerns about parking be addressed somehow in ordinance?
Well, really, I think that highway commercial is the best place for the parking because it requires more parking than most, so.
Mr. Chairman, are you asking like specifically X number of spots per?
Yes.
I believe that's already in the zoning ordinance. This is going to be Steve's call, but my assumption is they would use the same as any retail.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, right now, we're good talking city only, right?
Yes,
Okay.
this is city only.
What, say, a couple of years from now, when the county wants to buy in,
Uh-huh.
now, are we gonna have to redo this?
That would be a county
Yeah.
question. That would
Okay,
not be a
okay, but I mean,
question.
later, but this is good for the city.
This is just
okay.
for the city. If you all recommend this tonight, then it will go to city commission next Tuesday for first read. Second read will be at the 25th meeting, and we will have it in place by July 1st when the license window opens. I will tell you one thing I didn't tell you all. KLC actually was able, when these new statutes came up this year, that hastened the deadlines for these. KLC was able to get into the law a pushback where if, let's say, I get a license in, I'm just going to use Morganfield. Morganfield hasn't done anything. I get a dispensary license for Morganfield. If Morganfield on December 15th says we're prohibiting medical cannabis licenses, then I lose my license in Morganfield. Because, and the reason they did that is we all had been told all along we had until January 1st, 2025 to be ready for this. And so when these bills came out that changed those deadlines, there was a protection put in, and that's for counties as well as cities. When I have talked to site selectors, that is a concern to them, that they're afraid to go and help people find sites in communities that haven't taken this issue up yet, for fear that someone may make an investment and lose that investment. So,
Very good. Other questions from the commission?
Well, one I got, I mean, and if the city didn't do anything,
Uh-huh,
the state regulations would take place.
yes.
All right.
It would default to allowing medical cannabis, the state regulations.
You have to
would
make
take place.
that decision that you're not gonna allow them to basically forbid any cannabis sales in the county or the
Right.
city. All right. Now, listening to your presentation,
Yes.
it looked like there was only two major issues between the city's ordinance and the state regulations. And that was the school, the 1,000-foot distance around the school and the
Yeah,
daycares.
that we want to make it clear. We believe that the state law includes all schools, but the regulators right now are just doing KDE schools. I think one of the reasons that the regulators are doing that is it would be difficult for them to go into communities and find small religious schools.
Yeah.
So,
So-
and then the limit of one per, or the 1 mile limit.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir,
All right.
you are correct.
What drove the 1,000-foot buffer zone from schools?
That was a state, and I think it's just to keep medical cannabis away from school children.
Why not further?
That would be, I guess we could go further. We just adopted what the state did. And I will tell you, when we put those buffer zones up, we were really shocked. We thought that it was going to take a long time to figure out areas. But it really, for commercial, it pretty much drove where it could go. Would you agree with that?
Where'd the 1 mile come from?
The 1 mile is, we were trying to figure out if you have dispensaries, and the traffic, we were trying to spread out, especially in 41.
And that gets you down to 5 eligible properties?
You could have up to 5 dispensaries. Now, there's an opportunity, if there's an opportunity, we may come back in a couple of years.
It
but-
seems like that's really advantage, giving 5 property owners in the city.
No, there are many, I'm probably not explaining that well. We put 1 mile, so let's say that you're at 200 US 41, then there can't be another one for another mile. We're not saying there'll be 5 dispensaries, but if you took it as the very first eligible address and measuring it out, and you were able to take advantage of that, it would be 5 dispensaries in all. But they have a list, Brian has a list of many eligible addresses.
So it's when you start designating one, it sort of starts a domino.
It would, if you're a mile down the road, yes.
Well,
So,
you're
but the fact
lucky,
of the matter is, there's just gonna be 1 dispensary anyway.
and
so.
you're lucky when they first began if you even get one.
Right.
If you only got
There's a
4 for
possibility
the
we might not get
whole
any.
area, and you only can have one if you're lucky in the county to begin with.
Right.
But you got, more county that might be going for that.
I think though historically, there's probably not many jurisdictions in the country where once they've adopted medical or recreational cannabis, that it shrinks.
Sure. I will tell you that I don't know of any other city that is as far along in the process in our region as we are. Bowling Green has adopted their zoning. A couple of cities in northern Kentucky are in the process. When I talked to the woman from California on Friday afternoon, she said that there were really only 5 communities that they were currently looking at because that were far enough along in the process, and we were one of the cities.
Dawn, if I remember correctly, Owensboro is choosing not to participate.
I don't think, what I was told was that she had contacted Owensboro and they didn't have an answer for her, but they have not targeted this. And that's based on what she told us, I haven't spoken to Owensboro. But and what she said was, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm not going to risk my reputation in trying to find sites in communities that haven't taken action yet. and then let someone make an investment that they might lose. So she's saying she was only looking at 5. Again, that's anecdotal, right? That's not me testifying. I can just testify to what she told me. But we have, in fact, today, we were contacted by another site selector.
Well, I guess where I was headed, if the 1 mile limitation is in there now, how
Uh-huh.
easily can that be amended later?
Well, that would be up to you all.
Right.
Right. Thank you all.
Thank you. Our task tonight, if I understand correctly, is to conduct this public hearing and make a recommendation to the city commission. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the city commission has the final, they will decide if this is passed, and they will decide if it's amended in the future, correct?
Yes, any amendment though would come back to you all, except for any regulatory fees, but any zoning amendment would come back to you all.
Okay, very
It
good.
could originate here. An amendment could originate here. Hold a public hearing, send it to the city, and they could do what they chose,
Okay,
which might be to turn it down.
right.
But either the planning commission or the city can propose an amendment to the zoning ordinance.
And yes, but only the city has final,
It always goes to the
Yeah.
city. They have-
yeah. In fact, whatever we do tonight, the city could overrule and do what they want to do.
We're making a recommendation.
Very good. Any other questions from the commission? Anyone else here this evening would like to speak in favor of the amendments to the city zoning ordinance? Anyone here tonight who would like to speak in opposition to this amendment? Or just has a question about it? Nothing else from anybody? Commissioners, any questions in any area? Yeah, I'm hearing none. I'll entertain a motion in regard to the proposed city zoning text amendments concerning medical cannabis.
I'll move that we recommend to the city commission that they adopt the city zoning text amendments as outlined by the city attorney.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Kevin Richard,
Yes.
Bobby Jarrett,
Yes.
Mac Arnold,
Yes.
Exar Royster,
Yes.
Dickie Johnson.
Yes.
Gary Gibson,
Yes.
Gray Hodge,
Yes.
Stacy Denton.
Yes.
Frank Boyette,
Yes.
Heather Tays.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. We're going to move on then to the zoning text amendment from the county concerning battery energy storage systems. Mr. Bishop, we're going to kick that off.
Yes, sir. This is the county zoning ordinance, text amendment, battery energy storage system. As we mentioned prior to this one, this text amendment originated with the fiscal court. So the planning commission will be making a recommendation to the fiscal court. The planning commission has 3 options, and TJ, please correct me if I'm wrong. Option 1 is to vote as presented, just as you did with the city. Option 2 is to recommend approval with proposed edits. And then option 3 would be to vote to not recommend the proposed zoning text be approved by the fiscal court. So any questions on the procedure? I know this gets a little weird at times.
But is the option of taking no action at all is not available? Tabling, or I guess we could table, but,
Yeah.
or just,
TJ, do you want to take that?
That is an option. It's not a good option, and it will move forward with no recommendation after a period of time. My strong recommendation that you either, as planning commission, recommend to approve it as presented, recommend amendments, or recommend denial, or if you have some technical problems, you could table it till the next meeting, but you get you're gonna get close to your time limit to have input.
Okay.
We'd have to calculate that if we get to that. We can calculate it tonight.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Bishop, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. The county has hired EUDS Consulting, which is an engineering firm that has been used by the city with Hempel and the city zoning ordinance. Mr. Gary Grubb is the main point of contact for that, and he is with us tonight, so we can ask technical questions of him. We also worked with county personnel such as Randy Tassa and Nick Stallings, who are the county codes administrators and the county engineer. And we have accounted for 2 tiers, which are 2 different systems of battery energy storage systems. And there's a lot of information in this ordinance, so I don't want to go spend a lot of time just blabbering on about it. So I will open it up to any questions from the members, so that way we can seek input from the public.
Any questions for staff to kick this off?
I have quite a few, Mr. Chairman. Have we found any Kentucky statutes that govern this for the state?
None that I'm aware of.
Do we have a POC that we can talk to at state?
Our understanding is that there's not any guidance coming from the state at this point.
Excuse me, the state has no safety concerns here or regulations?
There's a state public service commission, but at this point, there is no state agency regulating these, is our understanding.
Question, each one of these solar farms that are being proposed and being built, is each one of those going to need to have a storage area?
Commissioner Arnold, I can't really speak to that. It seems reasonable to make that assumption, but I can't say that definitively.
We have not received any requests one way or the other from the ones that we do have approved, that
Yeah.
they would be moving on to a storage facility at this point. The three I think that we've had have not come back to us with potential for that.
More questions?
Yes, the location of the 2 plant.
We have suggested that that go in the M2 district. Mr. Gibson, are you asking what zone or what specific location?
The zone and the location,
At this-
where they're gonna be in Henderson County.
At this point, we have not had a site plan application, but we have been in contact with a property owner who's here tonight for a piece of property near the intersection of 29th Austin Road and Airline Road, roughly a half mile from that intersection, I believe.
Is that
So we
not,
can show you on GIS if you would like to see. I just want to make sure that there has not been a site plan submitted for that site yet.
that has not come before us before?
There was a rezoning for M1, but through this process, we have determined, with the help of the county staff and the consultant, that M2 is the more appropriate zone. So that site would be coming back to the planning commission for a separate rezoning and a site plan application. And a conditional use permit as well. So 3 steps total on a local level.
Do we have any actual zones in the county for that?
M2,
Yes.
there are M2 zone or parcels in the county.
All right. I didn't know where they were at. You know where the locations are?
The ones that jump to the top of my head are largely going to be in the 4-star area,
Mm-hmm.
and then the Riverport area are the largest.
Okay.
More questions?
Yes, sir. Looking through the document on page 2, it says current state of the art. I understand that we'll have a date stamp on this, but I recommend removing current state of the art because when we could say mid-2024, I just don't want somebody reading this 10 years from now and thinking that we're foreseeing all that.
Excuse me, this is on page 2 of the ordinance,
Oh, I'm sorry, page 2 of the ordinance, yes.
which is 12 of the packet, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Tays, would you mind moving your microphone a little closer? Mr. Tays, would it be a different type of wording be more appropriate there, current industrial state, something along those lines?
Like mid-2024. I'm just concerned that, like I said, 10 years from now, somebody's going to read it and think that, oh, like what's going on right now is what we had considered here in 2024. And then on If I could keep going, is that okay?
If that same paragraph, I mean, it's so indefinite, it could be, it doesn't prescribe or proscribe anything. Where did this come, who wrote this?
Mr. Gary Grubbs was the primary author.
Okay. Does he represent the potential applicant?
He represents the county as their consultant.
Okay, very good, thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner, please go ahead.
Oh, no, that's fine. On page 3, under DMVGL, this looks like a copy paste where it says we are storage experts. I don't think that belongs in an ordinance where we're speaking first person. And then on page 5, it was the same again for MISO. Our mission is to manage the reliable delivery.
I think these are very good points. Okay,
Page 5, where, what section?
Under MISO,
Okay.
Midwest Independent System Operator. And then the editor in me is, I don't like how we have, some things are spelled out and then the abbreviation, and some is the abbreviation and then it's spelled out. It's not consistent throughout the document. I know that's I'm the daughter of an English teacher, so. And then on page 8, we mentioned tier 1. Or no, we mentioned tier 2, but we don't mention tier 1. Is there a reason tier 1 was left out?
I think tier 1 kind of goes away as we read on here.
This is largely going to be for the regulation of tier 2, which are probably going to be considered more utility grade. My understanding is that tier 1 would be more of a personal use or business use specific to one site.
Then you should put that in the,
Heather, where are you referring to on that section? I'm seeing tier 1 and tier 2, so that's what.
On A, we talked about tier 1 and tier 2, and then.
D, section D.
On B, correct. It says, this shall be submitted with tier 2, but what about tier 1? We just, I'm not gonna submit anything with tier 1, or?
See that under D is in dog? If we go back to the, higher on the page, the B,
I got it, and I think the understanding, again, what Brian mentioned there, is that those are personal use, and so we do only currently allow them in, if you keep going into the M1 or M2, but we don't regulate those as much, and again, this is us trying to figure out stuff, because we didn't have, like, the cannabis ordinance, for instance, that had state guidance on kind of how you work that through. I do know that the consultant did mention some things about only allowing tier 1 in M1 and M2, because again, those could be personal storage, like if someone had a solar on their top of their house and they would store the excess power for, but at this point, because of the knowledge, I guess, that we have on these for safety reasons, M1 and M2, but we didn't push them as far as requiring those site plans and stuff like that, because they're not to that level.
Correct, and that could be a fairly small system that someone mounts in their garage.
is that specified in here somehow?
The tier
Page
1.
one, yeah, page 1.
And defined in a technical term so that the enforcement agents can.
It is based
enforce
on the production value of the tier 1 or the tier 2 system.
Okay. If we go on the same page, if you don't mind, Commissioner, if we go up to item B near the top, battery energy storage systems constructed or installed before the effective date of this ordinance shall not be required to meet the said requirements. That indicates to me that these things can be installed without this ordinance.
I believe that is referring to any tier 1 system. I could be wrong there. So for example, if someone has a charging station for their Tesla, I believe that is what that is meaning to include.
again, instead of saying that's the intent, spell it out.
I would, if this ordinance is not enacted, can these facilities be constructed in our county?
Mr. Chairman, I would prefer that question be answered by the county code.
Yeah. Well, are we talking about what going on at the jail when they put this solar system and use that power for the jail?
That is just
Are
a-
we talking about like out there at Sandy Watson where they use that, pull that electricity from the line when it not in use very much and sell it back?
That's
Oh,
not storage.
Yeah, I believe that is just solar generation.
this here is.
No, like what was approved at the jail at the last meeting was
Yeah.
a solar
Yeah,
array
that-
site plan.
That's the way I took it. No, that shouldn't have had nothing to do with this.
That later, though, kind of like what Mac asked, we could be seeing something with regards to them putting in some kind of storage facility for the excess energy, but at this time, again, that was not ever mentioned in any of this that we have, whether they were the bigger scales or the smaller scales.
Well, could we get somebody from the county to talk to us about what they recommend and why they are looking at this to lay their own?
Commissioner Gibson, we have the consultant for the county here.
Okay.
To my question, are these facilities allowed in our county now? Do we have anybody here that can address that?
Mr. Toss would probably be the appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Your name, sir?
Randy Tassa,
Address?
1990 Barrett Court, Swedish.
And do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much.
Our current zoning ordinance does not address battery energy storage systems, so there's not a permitted use or conditional use in the ordinance to put it in. So this is why we need to act an ordinance to address it.
So it would not be allowed?
That's correct.
Very good.
Something
Simple enough.
This size, yes.
Okay, thank you.
But what happens right now when individual homeowners has got solar panels out there and they've got battery storage systems that are in place? So are we saying that those individuals are violating zoning regs?
It says in here they're exempt.
It's
Okay.
essentially they're being grandfathered.
Okay, well, I didn't understand that. Okay.
Okay, now we're making this distinction between tier 1 and tier 2 again?
I believe it's any battery storage systems in that regard.
Okay, but I was just told that they're not allowed because there's no use in the ordinance.
Make sure I understand the question. My understanding from Commissioner Johnson is like, say for someone has one installed in their garage already, we would not be regulating that. Those could exist right now, we would not know that, which would be the tier 1 is classified by this. So in that regard, those exist, they would be grandfathered in by this ordinance. Am I misunderstanding the question, sorry?
What, okay.
This
I understand.
tier 1 and tier 2, there's a difference between what I look at it as tier 1's more like a personal use and tier 2's more commercial, which would then kick in. Commercial would have to go to planning commission for site plan approval, possible rezoning and all that. So it's treated a little differently.
Well, I think that was the question. Do we have an ordinance that makes the distinction between the tier 1 treated differently than tier 2?
That's what this would do.
Okay, so in this case, on this item on B at the top of this page, that should be tier 1 in the
Mr. Chairman, are you referring to battery energy storage systems constructed or
Yes.
installed before? I believe that language covers either. Reading that right now, I believe that
Okay,
is either tier 1 or tier 2.
except I'm told that tier 2 cannot be constructed because there's no,
Basically, anytime we have a commercial development, we always have site plan requirements, which comes from the planning commission. And so without having a proper zone for commercial type developments, we would need to have an update to the zoning ordinance to allow it as a permitted use or conditional use.
But if they've already got it installed on their property and it's not violating any state regulations, any major violations with electrical energy providers, because I know one individual's got an enormous, solar field out at his house that's directly tied into the, I'm not gonna call any names, but major power lines, and all of his goes straight to that. He don't have any kind of battery storage system at all, because I've talked to him at length about it. He said the only ones that he knew of was small residential people that just got a few solar panels out there, and then they've got a battery backup, for their own personal use. So,
And I think the purpose of this ordinance was to regulate more the commercial side of it, the larger scale over 600 kilowatts, and not the,
Personal use or business.
yes.
I think what I'm hearing though, on some of these clauses that are kind of open-ended, maybe some clarity applies to tier 1 and tier 2 or tier 1 only, would probably make this more concise.
Quite possibly, and that's when I refer back to the options, we can make edits, or we can make suggested edits to the account.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions for the gentleman? Thank you, sir. The other questions,
Yes, sir, I saw a question.
by all means.
On that same page, you have two Ds and two Es within section 32.04. That needs to be fixed. You see that?
yeah.
Okay, on page 11,
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
While we're still on this page, on the second D, makes reference to permits and approvals by the Kentucky Energy and Environment Cabinet, various other regulatory agencies. So there is state regulations that apply here.
Second,
According to federal, state, and local environment.
I think that's a blanket statement
It-
moving forward.
exactly, because from what we've been able to determine is that there's no agency with jurisdiction at this point.
So the reference to the Kentucky Energy and Environment Cabinet,
That is our assumption, is that they will regulate these in the future. It's similar when we would say something is subject to any state, local, or federal regulations.
okay, even though those regulations may not exist.
Correct.
Okay? Commissioner, any more?
on page 11, at the top of the page, number 2, says we'll be notifying landowners, property owners within a 1 mile radius. Why only 1 mile?
That is based on the conversations we'd had with the contractor, I'm sorry, the consultant and other fire departments, that typically a 1 mile radius is a standard in these incidents.
So that would be like the evacuation radius?
Correct.
What if the wind blows?
Or the
Or blows it more than 1 mile?
This is a starting point. That could be increased,
Do we have any data on that? On
none that I'm aware of.
like plume data and, you don't have anything?
No.
On the same
I
page,
would recommend making that a larger radius.
on the same page under signage, that would be paragraph C1, makes reference to something called a reach-back phone number. What's a reach-back phone number?
That is the number of the property owner or operator.
You would be calling, in the event of an emergency, you're going to be calling the property owner?
There's two things, two ways to attack it. One, the 911 call, and then the operator themselves would be notified that they could remotely control the site.
Okay.
Property owner as in lessee,
Okay.
as in the person
Operator.
that owns that facility.
Storage facility.
Okay. Okay.
Again, it could be spelled out better, but
Okay, and we're going to remove vegetation from areas within 20 feet. I assume
Correct. Vegetation that could lead to a spreading of fire.
it doesn't seem very far. I assume that came from some recommendations.
That it was based on the consultant's recommendation.
Okay.
Can we get the reasoning behind that maybe? Because that was also one of my questions. Because on page 12, we say the same thing. 20-foot minimum. Why is it only 20 feet?
I believe, and I'm not a fire professional, but I do believe that some of that does come from the NFPA document, like requirements from that, from the fire code that requires vegetation to be so far away, and so that's their minimum. Again, the consultants here, you know, we need more info on that, but I do believe that that's part of that fire code where they got that number from. At least that. Again, we could do it for, you know, whatever, but that was a starting point.
So I guess since we do have the consultant, can we hear the consultant's logic?
I would like to.
That's very good. Your name, sir,
Gary Grubbs,
and your address?
121 Hidden Forest, Glasgow, Kentucky.
Very good. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. Please help us, sir. We've got a lot of questions.
All right. Your question on the 20-foot is the standards from the National Fire Code, but it is a minimum standard. Like he said, that's a starting point. I don't see that as a major issue, and as far as increasing it, it just gives you additional safety.
Okay, and you said it's NFPA, which code is that? Is that specific to 855? And that is not specific to battery energy storage systems, correct?
Yes, that is.
That is specifically for battery energy
Yes.
storage systems?
Yes.
855?
Yes. And I've provided copies of that to Brian, if he needs to disseminate it further.
What kind of setbacks do we have here from the property line?
Can you get me on that number? I don't recall the exact.
My memory is that setbacks would be in agreement with the zone in which it was positioned in. So in this case, it would be M2 setbacks.
Which would be?
Randy, would you answer that real quick, please?
I don't have my zoning ordinance in front of me, but I believe it's 50 foot front and rear, and then I believe it's 25 from the side property lines.
That's my memory.
Okay, thank you. So is there anything in this ordinance having to do with distance from another structure, a residence, or a
Yes.
school, or a church, or
Yes, from from structures.
what would that be?
Again, I can't quote the,
A 20-foot minimum for principal structures. That's going to be under site requirements G on page 22 of your packet, or 12 in the ordinance.
again, that is minimum standards.
So those are setback requirements. What about distance from a, so you can be within 40 feet of a home?
Based on the setbacks, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood it.
And these are, in Kentucky, this is the first one, or this is the first ordinance that's been developed. It's highly used in other places like California, Texas, New York. They normally have theirs in the cities by schools. They have them all over the place as far as setbacks and required distances, so.
Okay. Other questions?
Never mind, I see that wasn't reading far enough.
Just to make note for edits in the future, on page 16 of the ordinance, which is 26 of the packet, paragraph J makes reference to something called the Henderson County Codes Department.
Yeah, I believe that's a typing area.
Yes. Next, page 17, several references that read along this line. The Tier 2 best should include appropriate battery thermal runaway prevention. And number one, that could prevent overheating. Things that should also be considered. Consideration should be given. Something should be considered. There's no requirements here. It's just-
Those, we agree those should be called, or should be listed as shall, not should or could.
Okay, making them definitive if we're going to
Yes,
include
those
those. Thank you.
Those are appropriate.
Brian, I've been sitting here just kind of kicking around myself. Basically, we deal right now, we're talking about the lithium-ion batteries.
Correct.
Correct. And I'm gonna say what it's gonna say in 5, 10 years from now, they start developing a different type of
That's-
battery than that.
That's
it might
already, they're already changing from.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, are these regulations gonna fit those batteries? Or do we need to specify something that if those batteries come in, that we have to really look at them?
Gary, you want to jump in there?
That, the way this was written, that was thought to be handled more by the application taken at the time that the installation was going to be installed, so that you could look at the technology and the type batteries and the safety protection and everything at that time when the application is filed, to be able to develop what is needed. It's not,
Are you referring to new sites or existing sites that they would change the type of batteries at?
Well, I was just saying, if they end up designing new type of batteries that may have different concerns, I mean, are more toxic or whatever, are these, I mean, regulation we're doing is applying to the lithium ion battery, but is it gonna basically, if we get into new batteries, is that gonna we're gonna have to start to go over again with them?
In the ordinance, there's language that states that on an annual basis, the company would provide training to the volunteer fire departments. So that way, if there's new battery technology coming out, the training and the operations manual would constantly be updated. Or updated at least annually. Am I answering your question?
Yeah.
That was the attempt to keep up with technology. Because as Mr. Grubb said, the technology is changing rapidly.
Yeah.
If we go on to page 19, which makes a reference to section 32.12, section paragraph A, makes reference at the end, all training materials, equipment, and PPE required will be at the best owner and operator's expense. I guess everybody understands that. Then we get to this, the two preferred first responder arrangements. One preferred, which is first responders do not enter the gated facility unless human life is in peril, and the non-preferred first responder arrangement. Somebody address that, I don't understand.
it was my recommendation, or would be my recommendation, for the preferred. I put both in there so that it could be looked at by both the planning, zoning committees, whatever, to make their decision with input from the fire departments. Now, this being new technology, being new dangers, it may be, and in a lot of places it is, such that they do not enter the facilities at all with the fire department. It's like a substation for Henderson or HMP&L. Basically, they stay outside the fence until it's de-energized and safe for them to go in if they need to go in. But they don't go there first and cut the gate lock and go into it.
Okay. So who would address the situation inside the fenced area?
It is, for better or worse, it's normally, in today's standards, allowed to just burn itself out. They're in individual units that are self-sustained and able to take care of fire in each unit and not spread to the other units.
Mr. Chairman, and to add to that, I believe the belief is let the chemical reaction run its course, and then the fire department would be able to lay down, I believe it's called a curtain, a water curtain that would keep, or try to prevent the plume down and keep the fire from spreading.
Okay. I have one more just general question. This is obviously a lengthy document, quite complex.
Yes.
Who's going to enforce this?
That would be the county code administrator.
Okay. Very good. Do we have anybody from the fire department affected?
Sir?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
please. Is this, are we going to go through this?
I believe Mr. Watson has updated that, so we have his updated PowerPoint. available, and then you should be able to follow along with that pretty close.
Okay. So your name, sir?
My name is Chris Watson,
Your address?
1388 Dillon Circle, Henderson, Kentucky.
And do you promise to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Are you a member of what fire department?
Zion Fire Department, sir.
Very good. That would be in the area of be your jurisdiction?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, what can you tell us about apparently there's a fire hazard with these.
And I have again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners, let us to come up here and speak to us about this. I have a very rudimentary PowerPoint here, and hopefully get some education. I think sometimes people, you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. In these instances, it sounds like the state of Kentucky doesn't even know what we know right now, knowing that we don't have a lot of guidance when it comes to these incidents that could be possibly taking place in our own county. So if you don't mind, I'd like to do a quick little presentation. There is some PowerPoint sheets that we got some assistance with the Kentucky EPA on this, and unfortunately that gentleman could not be here. This was his PowerPoint, his demonstration, but I don't like to use another man's work, so I can put in my own words. So my PowerPoint may be very similar, but same information, so please interrupt if you have any questions. So basic lithium battery emergencies. Again, for us in the fire service, we get a lot of direction from a gentleman by Paul Combs, and it kind of summarizes where we're at right now when it comes to lithium batteries. We don't know everything about them. Like Ms. Toe said, subject matter experts. They don't exist in this field yet. It's a good guess game. It's good, better, best, and you're making identity. So this is for us, and our awareness has to be up is because as these things transition through the community of Henderson, we're the ones that have to be aware of it. We're the ones that are going to be affected by it. We're the ones that have to provide the service in case this incident happen. I don't think any of the manufacturers can say they're 100% safe. Even if they say they're 99.9% safe, we're there for that 0.1% of that incident happening. So we're going to be there if something was to happen. So go with me. I usually teach this as awareness to firefighters, get their lithium-ion battery basics. So we'll go from there. Kind of our training outline here is just understand the batteries, what affects us in firefighting, and then some of our hazards that we're seeing with air monitoring. That comes directly from the SDS sheets, which is the safety data sheets that the companies put out about lithium-ion batteries. So nothing proposed by Chris Watson or what my thoughts is. It's pretty much out there for everyone to look at. So can anybody here spot the lithium battery? It's pretty hard, right? Yeah, you go in there and you're looking. Again, we know what we don't know, and this, again, is pretty rudimentary. So if you're able to see my PowerPoint a little bit closer, the ones on the right, the Duracell and the Energizer, actually say lithium battery. So if you go to Walmart tonight or you go to your CVS or Walgreens, stop by and you see lithium batteries, this is not the same lithium technology that we're speaking of tonight, right? This is a lithium metal that's inside these batteries, right? This allows them to be recharged, but it's not the same technology that we have the big fear of that we're seeing these happenings happen. So again, bear with me here. That's an alkaline regular battery they've had around for, gosh, it seems like forever. And these are, again, our rechargeable lithium batteries that we have now. And that's a big difference. A lithium battery is a secondary battery, meaning it can be charged again. And that's why, again, the technology's pretty much caught up for us that we've captured lightning in a bottle, to say the least, right? We're able to put energy now and keep recreating energy. Technology's there, just don't know if we've had all the safety parameters in there for us yet. So different types of battery types. That one on the right, the one they're unpeeling, that's the one we dealt with during obviously we had a meth issue a time ago, and that was the lithium when people said that they're using. This is the ones that we had to be aware of, and you can purchase large amounts of in the past few years. Things have changed. It's pretty much a basic battery type. It's all the same. You're going to have a cathode, you're going to have an anode, and don't let me speak over anybody. Those are positive and negatives. Right? You're going to have some type of separator that's inside. Could be a piece of plastic, small mesh screen, right? That's going to allow these positive electric, I guess the protons, electrons, everything kind of go through. These ions kind of go through and separate. Okay, so very simple process and everything. The lithium batteries that we're worried about are the ones kind of say here, and then go with Mr. Grubb says the technology has changed, right? Where we went from the cylindrical cell, which is the one on the right that you see, kind of looks like a double-A battery. Then you get the prismatic cell, the pouch cells, and then now we've seen things like the 2170, and there's even a bigger cylindrical battery that's even out there being developed. This has changed. All right, this is changing so much, we believe it in the fire service side is, we're not keeping up codes quick enough to say where the batteries change enough. And I think there was some language that y'all reading in the ordinance I had a chance to see is, the best practice of this year. Well, it may be the best practice of 6 months, best practice each year as these things kind of grow and change and what type of hazards you're gonna have. So the 1860 650 was a very popular one, came out in the 90s. And again, we've gotten better and better with lithium batteries doing the technology. And now with the big surge with the solar panels and the stored energy, it's going to just keep happening quicker. People are going to, obviously there's some money involved in this. So, and again, the larger battery there that you see on the right, that's 46 by 80. Again, that's typically how they're designed or what you go read about them. That's like the size of a beer can. All right, so now you're talking about, we went from the small, little bit larger than the double-A battery to a battery that's the size of a beer can. Very large battery. Obviously, it's going to be able to charge, recharge. It's going to be able to do more. Again, more hazards come with more energy because as you make things bigger or smaller, the safety measures kind of break out with them as well. So these are some of the things that we're seeing. So, all right, so just kind of we'll break down how these things actually work. All right, you got your motor running, right? You're going to have your go from your anode to that's your negative side. These chemical reactions going through. Again, there's electrical light. There's a chemical inside the battery that's going to cross a little separator. And for us, a lot of times, this is the electrolyte that we talk about that's going to produce some of our hazards. I'll talk later about this. Ions are going to pass through the separator, go to the opposite side while this thing's discharging. Well, as soon as they go to recharge it, those ions are going to go back and forth. You got to think these batteries' lives may last 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 10,000, 15,000 cycles, whatever the technology allows them to cycle through and keep reusing that energy. All right. It's, again, a very simple process. Doesn't look like it's too hard. Full discharge there, right? But where we see the problems is when that electric light or when that separator kind of breaks down. And what happens to it when it does break down, that cathode and that anode will actually start to touch itself, discharge, and create heat. And there's a conversation piece that you may see around this if you Google it, right, called thermal runaway. Well, if that event happens, right, these batteries superheat, they break the shell, and they start off-gassing. And what do? They off-gas things that we know about as of now. Right, we know that due to testing, right? They off-gas carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, hydrogen, oxygen, and of course hydrogen fluoride. Right, the other crazy thing about the batteries is when they begin to off-gas, and it's a rapid increase in heat. Right, so think about heat. Right? 212 degrees burns water, right? Or actually gets water going, gets really boiling, right? Water. Right? We can actually have an event where a battery's just sitting there in a normal state. This event happens in a second and increases the temperatures up to 1,800 degrees. So you see where interferes in the fire service comes in, depending on the other combustibles, where it's located, if this event actually takes place on exterior or absence finds its way out on exterior, can it get more modules going, can it start propagating it further, right? Other things that we don't like about it, that a lot of times when we talk about the suppression aspect for fire, right, we can remove fuel, heat, and oxygen is what takes to make fire, right? Typically when the fire service fires, you use water and you cool it down and get rid of the heat. Well, in some events, they tell us, hey, use something that's going to cover, smother, and use air. Well, these electrolyte in the mix right inside the batteries actually produces its own oxygen. Right? So these batteries, not only can they just keep going, extinguishment after thermal rate happens doesn't happen because water at 212 dissipates. If it's 1,800 degrees, how much water is in the battery? Right? Again, I don't think we're going to see a lot of much. The other one there is hydrogen. There's a lot of hydrogen gas. So all my historians, please go back, Mr. Boyd, right? Help us out. The Hindenburg was filled up with what? Hydrogen gas. What type of event did it happen when it actually found a spark? Right, it was a massive explosion. Right, so those are things, and these are hazards that we recognize according to SDS sheets. Right, they're found with lithium ions, just already out there right now. As this technology changes, we're going to, of course, incorporate different or possibly more hazards. Right, if this technology changes in this area, what type of hazards are going to be one module, what are going to be happening to this other module, what happens is going to be this one, it could be a domino effect going through. Right? Thermal runaway reaction, which I'll show you a visual aid to help you hopefully grasp what it is. Rapid degradation does not require any oxygen, nearly impossible to stop once happen, because once this cycle stops, you got to think, it run away, it produces heat, it off-gasses, and as it creates more heat, it's going to create off-gas, and creates more heat, creates off-gas, and it becomes a circle effect. Until energy. There's not a fire department in the country right now, and we get reference to FDNY, they have never extinguished, and I don't like saying never shouts, but they have never extinguished a lithium battery fire. The fire ran out of juice, or the battery ran out of juice. It just went away. Right? They've applied thousands of gallons of water in these instances, and it doesn't get out, it just cools up their batteries down, so they don't have the thermal runaway effect. Okay? If you look on the right here on the side, you're going to see a battery that's charging. This is a regular. This is about a battery pack. I can't give the size. I'm going to say it's less than 50 of those cylindrical batteries. So this is an event that took less than 90 seconds, right? That you get an off gas and you get a thermal runaway. You get heat greater than 1800 degrees. You get fire spread and hazardous gases in those events. I know that was a scooter, but we got to still the same day. It's the same technology, lithium-ion batteries, right? Right. Why are we seeing these things fail? A lot of it's going to be for we see in a possible BS systems or the history of the BS systems, right? It's the short circuits, right? Overcharging and discharging. Right, if you're getting batteries made on the Mondays and Fridays as well, right, if they actually break down or degrade, right? What type of safety factors is the system around? I know these gentlemen probably have a ton of safety factors. They found bottom modules, nodes, things that are going to watch the heat of the batteries, things that are going to watch if they break down or whatnot, but we just can't say it's going to be a fail-safe, proof-safe thing for these events not happening, especially in these facilities. So this is kind of what we see with mechanical use, penetration breakdown of something that wasn't installed properly, which obviously could possibly happen, but it's overcharging and discharging that we see a lot of times is large events or large battery uses. Propagation is a term that you got to see, right? What's propagation, right? It means this event where one battery goes. Well, if they're all packaged in very tightly together, because again they're trying to hold up condensed spaces and get as much as energy they can possibly store, these batteries are not separated by a firewall. So it's not an event where you get one battery that's wired up and you get a firewall protecting. These batteries are going to be grouped and clustered together pretty well. When one goes off, it's going to propagate to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, until it finally eats up all the fuel, or we do start cooling down the other batteries so they're not able to off gas. Right? The crazy thing about it is it does not take much to get this battery to its point where it's going to begin off gas. It's 300 degrees. Right? If you want to know when things start off gas and have a piece of paper that you have right in front of you, it takes a little bit more than 400 degrees to get it to burn. All right, so there's a little bit of a difference that you can get a battery going before you can get a piece of paper burning. Okay. Here's an instance, right? It's I don't know, it's going to be similar to what we're being proposed here in Henderson County, but it is an instance that we do have documentation and that we have known source. So work with me here. This is a container. This is going to be very similar, I think, what the BES systems may or may not be, because I'm not sure what the technology is going to be, but kind of give you a history of this one. This one I had 27 racks of battery modules, right? 14 modules per rack, 28 lithium-ion pouch cells. Remember, there's a difference between the cylindrical, the prismatic, and pouch. Small ones, think about your phone or watches, right? That'd be a pouch. Over 10,584 cells in there. Right on top of this unit, to try to keep it cool so that off gas and that overheat wouldn't play, they put 8 HVAC units at 75 degrees, right, to kind of keep it cool. They also, during this time, they had the best of the commissioned recommendations, right, from NFPA or from whoever was at the time, board and say, hey, design it like this, right? These are the safety things that we're going to put installed for you to make sure a large event happens. That a BESDA smoke detection system would activate it appropriately. Now, everything fell in line, activated appropriately. They used a NOVAC 1230 total flooding clean agent system, right, which just a suppression system time. They were helping the event of this, and they dumped over 700 pounds of that agent inside this box. Right, because they had an event in Surprise, Arizona. All right, the trailer itself is 50 by 14 by 13. Okay. Do we have any audio?
We can work on that for the IT.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah. Audio is pretty much this is just to give you the breakdown. That night, right, when this incident happened, they had a response from a worker that was out there, said there was a gas that was escaping from one of the buildings. Right at the time, the fire department went out there and started doing their thing, right? They were there to help assist and hopefully stop, destroying property or protecting any lives that are there. During that event, they went out there and measured. They found high levels of hydrogen cyanide and carbon monoxide, which allowed them to start a hazmat response, meaning the firefighters on scene were not the ones that were actually dedicated to resolve this incident. So I had to call a special team of people in to help resolve this. Well, during the resolve, they were there for a little over 3 hours. Maintenance workers said, we're going to try to see if it's cleared out because we're not getting more gases. All the readings went down. Pretty much what an investigation would tell you if there's any toxins. As the firefighters opened the door, they were met with a deflagration, which means there was a large explosion of a volume of smoke. Right? That deflagration was caused because they had a thermal runaway take place inside this container that had, at the time, all the commissioned or recommendations to be a safe container. Right? Had a man door. I know that's some changes to technologies that we're going to say they're non-entry, Right, but this one at the time had a man door on it that allowed people and workers to go out there and change models and do some testing. Right? This is just the battalion chief saying thankful that her 4 firefighters that responded to the incident, none of them were killed, but several of them spent months inside the hospital. And several had some injuries that obviously, they get to live with for the rest of their life. They speak to these 4 gentlemen back on duty. I can tell you that for the personal experience of knowing the situation, but they're back on duty. And again, technology, what did they do? The recommendations from NIOSH or the OSHA when they came into the report, get a better understanding of what you're dealing with. Right? If things are going to keep turning and changing, how is the fire service supposed to keep a better understanding of what you're dealing with? Right? Unless we had some known dedication, this is going to be it. And again, around the board, that's the unknown right now. So there's the 4 gentlemen that went out there and had to go through that event with a explosion. So my question is, I asked you, if I told you that an explosion happened in a container, or they were thrown a runway with 1,800 degrees of heat and everything that happened in a container, what do you think the inside of that container would look like? Be burned up, pretty charred, pretty bad, right? It'd be something that looked like a house fire, something very similar to that. Thank you. We got a couple seconds there. Let him talk.
While you're waiting on that, can I ask you?
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned hazmat. Does Henderson have a hazmat response team?
Henderson County or Henderson City, ma'am?
Either.
Yeah, Henderson County does not. In Henderson City, I would have to check. It'd be a question Chief Dixon probably asked to have a response.
Does that mean?
Evansville Fire Department, yes, ma'am, they did.
Are there any others in the vicinity?
Owensboro Fire Department would have most likely have a hazmat. And again, those are chief questions for Chief Knight and Chief. Who's over there, Owensboro right now? Howard, Chief Howard right now. Any questions for them? Okay. But again, going back, what did we think that event would look like? And I lost mine. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you can click on that one. Sorry, it got misarranged right there. All right, that's that container after the event. Right? That just tells you that the vapor inside, after this electrolyte is mixed, cathode anode mixed, comes out, discharges inside 3 hours, didn't vent out enough. Firefighters open a door, and they get a sudden boom where it knocked firefighters over 40 feet backwards through a chain link fence. Right? If you saw that and then talked to the battalion chief, that's one thing she was very concerned about. How our firefighters got injured on this incident. Right? It wasn't just the fact that we know there's a risk and there's a hazard there. And how did they get hurt right there? Have they done training with them? Sure they have. Right? Did they know some hazards? Sure they did. Did they do by the book? Probably so. Right? Still in this event, there's going to be some hazards. Again, the unknown hazards is what we're worried about in the fire service, especially here in Henderson County. Right? Is the audio back up and working?
We have no audio.
We have no audio. Okay. Well, this video here, I can tell you, right, the way it started was just a shock for it, but I'll tell you what he's going to say and the way the news article's going to get. It's been 2 weeks now and this container's been burning. All right, it's actually in the building, a little over 3,000 batteries inside. 3,000, not a lot, but 3,000. 2 weeks. Fire suppression system kicked in. They go in there and they have to make some hazards. Looks around the building because the way it was zoned was almost in the middle of town. Wasn't too far from places. The way it's operating inside here, they've got a thing, and the headline news for that area is fire been burning for 2 weeks.
Mr. Watson,
Sir.
would you mind trying sound now?
I can, sir.
If this doesn't work, then it's
Man, I know this video so well, I can probably lip read it to you, okay? So this, again, it's a 2-week fire, right? At the time, about 11 days in, they had to go back and start doing air monitoring and checking, and they had to go evacuate almost 1,000 residents outside the way because they were too close. Right, 11 days into an event, right? And again, manpower, right? If this is a career department, they got plenty of people, but on a county staff, where do you find enough people to start evacuating the large areas, maybe up to a mile, right? For 11 days, who's staying on site for 11 days? There's a building right there. There's the closest commercial areas, right? They had to evacuate all that around, right? That yellow line that you see there is the 5-inch hose delivering well over 1,000 gallons a minute of water inside the building, right? For how long, I can't say exactly, but I'm assuming that it was there for 10 minutes, at least 10,000 gallons of water. It's there for 11 days they did it, they'd be over almost 100,000 gallons of water, just at that minimum level. Right? So what's it going to take to actually extinguish these? Again, there is no clear notification there. SDS sheets for lithium cars right now, battery cars, are up between 6,000 to 40,000 gallons of water to extinguish one of these. We don't even have great guidance for that, but we got to be ready, right? Always here, always ready, as Chief Dixon say, for his members. Same thing for the county members as well. Atmospheric hazards. So this is the one that we know of because of SCA sheets and where we do find some of the information, right? And not just the fire hazards, but we're going to get atmospheric hazards. If this thing is let to burn or let it go, right? Fire department gives no assistance. Don't put water on it. Stay behind the fence, but you're going to let this thing burn and burn for 2 weeks. Well, there's going to be some atmospheric hazards. So I asked everybody, what are the atmospheric hazards? What's our known of them? So a couple of them they know about and should be very knowledgeable to people is carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. Carbon monoxide obviously comes from incomplete combustion, right? We see CO detectors at most of our warehouses or most of our stores. You can go pick up one for a couple bucks. Carbon dioxide, it's what makes your drinks fizzy. Right, so those are actually here in our commercial area. So we have things. Hydrogen chloride, don't see that one much. Hydrogen cyanide for officer firefighters, we see that one a lot. Right, it's from the off-gassing. Hydrogen gas, going back to Hindenburg, this is on their SCO shit. This is the one that we can't fear about for flammable and probably in the event that happened, Surprise, Arizona. Meaning that they had a hydrogen gas stored event. Right, and as they opened the door, a rich environment of air rushed in if there was any ignition source or heat, right, and lit off that because hydrogen gas actually has a high flammability range. Got to think that's 4 to 75%, right? It can be as little as 4% with 96% of oxygen, or as much as 75% of hydrogen, 25% of oxygen, and you're going to have a flammable event. You're going to have an explosion or bomb, right? That's going to go off. And then hydrogen fluoride. Well, this is a big one, right? And this is the one that probably out of all of them, there's a great threat of boo-boos, but they're all pretty bad. This is one we kind of worry about because, again, this is one they put in the SCS sheets because it says toxin inhalation hazards, right? It says that you get it on your skin and absorb some action cause heart problems, right? Because it goes after calcium or potassium inside your body, right? They do have an antidote for these, but you got to get on it pretty quick, right, for them. But what I ask everybody is here, I got a number there. It says 30 parts per million. Does anybody know what that even means? What a part per million is or how to even visualize it, right? It's a pretty hard one there. I can tell you there's a part per million right in front of your nose right now and you don't want to even know it right now, right? You don't know if to believe me or not, right? But I came up with a simple way to hopefully help firefighters and board members and chairmen, right, and everybody in the room to kind of understand what a part per million is and when we look at these, why we have to take these hazards serious, okay? Anybody got a phone they would like to get out for me, do some math? Where's Tompkins? All right, so we're going to do some simple math for me, okay? Once you get your calculator out. You got it? All right, so how many inches are in a foot, sir? We're going to say 12, all right? Simple math. I'm telling you, I keep it simple, right? I'm just a simple farmer with simple math. We got 12. All right, so how many feet in a mile, sir?
5,200.
All right, so let's say 12 and multiply that by 5,208. What number do you get, sir?
63,360.
All right, 63,360. Go ahead and multiply that number by 15.75.
197,920.
All right, Mr. Tompkins, if I came to your house and said, congratulations, you won $1 million, and all I have home is $997,000, 920, would you take it from me?
Sure.
Oh, sure you would, right? So we're pretty close to there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so anybody know what I just did there? My math teacher's gonna be so proud of me from school for this one, okay? All right? I did a little conversion, it's called a conversion, right? It's called to give me an understanding. So we in the fire service don't look at part per million anymore, we look like part per mile. So when you see a number up there that says 30, think of that as inches. Okay, so sorry I'm going to have to destroy your piece of paper here. We still have standard rule paper. I think it's roughly, 11 inches still. That really hasn't changed. 8.5 by 11. I'll just say my math's going to tell me roughly that's 30. So when I now look at a hazard this way, I'm thinking that 30 inches out of 15.75 miles is all I have that's safe. By volume. I'm going to say that again. When you look at these hazards in isolation, what we care and what we worry about for our citizens and as responders, 30 inches out of 15.75 is immediate danger of life and health according to OSHA standards. We have to be aware, right, so we don't find ourselves in a hazard. We have to be aware of these hazards so we don't put our people in that hazard area as well. Right? I don't know what the technology is going to be. Right? I can tell you that right now the technology we have, these are some of the gases that they're saying are going to be out there. And as our job, to protect the citizens, protect life, we have to make good, better, best decisions for them. Understanding these hazards, not just saying it's only 30 parts per million, but having a true understanding by volume, 30 parts per million out of 15.75, 30 inches out of 15.75 is your best and greatest area of safety. And that's it. Right? Hopefully that one's, right? Kind of on. And we know this because, again, they've done the studies for us, right? The battery people have come out and said, look, we'll go ahead. If you want to do a study and you want to do a recommendation, we'll burn one of these boxes up and tell you what's off-gassing. The hydrogen fluoride's there. right? Testing them or came out and said the hydrants fluoride there. Beware firefighters, they're telling us already. But in the volume of that, how big is it going to be? I understand that we're trying to get a plume model or a boom model in case these boxes go off, which would be great before we actually make a decision, right? Understand if this box completely goes off, how big's the plume, how much is it going to carry, is a mile radius distance good enough, right? If you look at the liters of HF that can be produced out of a vehicle, that's roughly one, I'll do the math, it's roughly 1 football field. If you look at the one out of our energy storage system, 3 megawatts, and I don't know what the size of megawatts the system is going to be, but 3 megawatts, you're looking at roughly 10 football fields. That's a pretty big event, a pretty big plume of gas of HF that we have to look for. So always the question is, I have to ask, so lithium batteries or lithium battery incidents hazardous? I've heard certain people say, no, that battery's not hazardous, right? Well, fire explosion, lithium-ion, sodium-ion batteries contain flammable liquid electrolyte that may vent, ignite, and produce sparks when subjected to high temperatures. When at over greater than 150 degrees Celsius or 302 degrees Fahrenheit, when damage or abuse, mechanical damage, or electrical overcharge. They may burn rapidly with flare burning effect, may ignite other batteries in close proximity. That's a propagation. Health-wise, contact with battery electrolyte may be irritating the skin, eye, and mucous membranes. Fire will produce irritating, corrosive, and/or toxic gases. Burning batteries may produce toxic hydrofluoride gases, and fumes may cause dizziness or asphyxiation. Right? Still sound if they're hazardous. Evacuation for a rail car or trailer that is involved in a fire. Isolate. Again, initial isolation for evacuation is a third of a mile in all directions. Right? Evacuation includes emergency responders for a third of a mile in evacuation. Telling our own people we got to get away. Right? And I ask is this hazardous, right? Because again, our DOT, or Department of Transportation, or PHMSA, right, tells us in our guidance from ERGs, which gets on every vehicle that's DOT placard. You get one of these books, and now they get their own page that tells you there is a hazard when it comes to lithium-ion or sodium-ion batteries. Right there on the page in 2024 edition. They're hazardous. They're definitely going to be hazardous. It's something, again, this is awareness we're trying to ask for the state of Kentucky. Obviously, we're not getting a big hand with, right? And we're trying to stay up to date every day. Every time something new comes in, we want to stay up to date on it so we can provide the best services possible to our citizens. Last one. Sometimes I think we're all trying to put the pieces and we want this to work together, but I think we're flying a plane while we're trying to put the pieces together right now and kind of jumping on this before we make a good decision. So I just ask y'all to make some good decisions for the community. So that's all I have.
Well, you scared us to death. How
There you go, Frank. Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm supposed to do for you, right?
Do we have any questions from the commission for this
Yeah,
gentleman?
I mean, I know there's not a tremendous amount of battery storage systems out here in the residential areas, but do you know of any of them that we've had a problem with an electrical fire from?
Current?
Yes.
I can talk that we had fires due to lithium batteries charging that we've dealt with in the fire service,
Okay.
closely, locally. Meaning that overcharging a lithium battery, which if everybody's got a watch or phone in their pocket, it's got a lithium battery in it.
Yes.
Overcharging, discharging, leaving in the sun actually is doing thermal damage to them. That's why certain phone manufacturers actually turn off the phone because they don't want to overcharge battery. And the C doesn't take a lot of heat to get to it where it's actually going to affect the flaming up.
Yep.
So again, for public service, we always tell people the minimal things. A phone can catch your house on fire. A toolbox battery or tool battery can catch your whole house on fire. And when we go to fires, these are things that we search for in the event of these instances.
Other questions?
I have a couple questions.
Yes, ma'am.
We had talked previously about the 20-foot offset from any structure. It sounds like we might want to look at something quite a bit larger than that.
Yeah, especially if there's going to be any vegetation that's pretty close and what the fence is. Now, we think that, though, if there's going to be fence to keep firefighters or keep animals or keep people out or vegetation not growing, you've got concrete or rock. If we are asked to start extinguishment, that puts us either far, far away of doing that or getting real too close to do that. You see what I'm saying? There's a give and a take on that, but 20 feet, you can get a good vegetation fire going in 20 foot of spread.
I did a little bit of research and I saw that NFPA 800 is
Coming.
trying to come online. Are you able to speak to that?
It's right now. It's just in the part of where if you want to talk about it, they'll let you. You can submit some questions. You can submit some comments. They don't have a committee that's together for 800, so there's no telling. Obviously, with NFPA 3000, it goes to the Asher events, hostile events, like shooters. They came out with that pretty quick to give some guidance. I imagine as quick as it's growing, this is not going to take the 3 or 4 year time it takes to it, but it's not out.
And this is specific to battery energy storage systems and safety involved.
Yeah, but hopefully for us, the recommendation for fire suppression, atmospheric monitoring, and everything else that the fire service needs right now from NFPA.
Can you say that one more time?
Everything the fire service needs right now from NFPA,
And it's
right?
NFPA 800 that's starting. on
Yeah,
that now.
they're doing it, right? We're not building them, we're going there to extinguish or submit hazards, so that we don't have that guidance yet.
So is it fair to say that you need an FPA 800 to?
We need help, the fire service.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
FBA 8.
NFPA 800, right, it's a standard that's coming out, they're taking actual submissions of people to speak on it, right? People, industry professionals to talk about, lithium batteries and the changing technologies, people who won't sit in rooms and say they're subject matter experts, but they're willing to have a conversation. Yeah, so
And
that's,
this would generate a set of regulations or
it'll set up
recommendations?
recommendations, hopefully, for the fire service side of this. The NFPA handles like life code and electrical code and all types of things, but a lot of times on the fire service side, NFPA will set down the thous and shalls and recommendations for fire suppression or incidents that are going to involve with these batteries. We do not currently have a standard that says, please, or you shall or should do this. We're all shooting off the hip on this. We're all having to communicate across the community of firefighters to see that, hey, what is the best practice in this event? And it's up in the air right now. Because again, if the technology changes from one department to the next, he can't give me his information and my information's changed. Right? It's not valid.
Do you say they're working to bring you the information that you're asking
NFPA
for?
seems like they're working on something. I can't speak for it because I'm not on the committee. I'm not signed up for the board. They won't talk to Chris Watson directly. I wish they did.
Well, no, and I understand there's a worst case scenario.
Sure.
All right, and I'm sure this slides that you showed us is probably one of the worst case scenarios in the country.
Yes, sir.
How many worst case scenarios do you know of?
Across the country and the world, there's been several events. Again, I don't want to go to China. I don't know the regs. I don't want to go to Sweden or Denmark or Netherlands.
Say in Kentucky.
In Kentucky, unknown, sir. I don't.
None?
Somebody else may know the
Mr.
statistics.
Chase, if I remember correctly, the article that you and I exchanged, there were 16 of these events last year. Is that accurate?
That sounds about right. But there's one that just happened in San Diego. And it, 2 weeks, also burned for 2 weeks.
Yes, it did.
Like, just happened.
And again, the more I believe, just like the cars, we didn't hear about lithium battery car fires until what did they start doing? Mass producing lithium battery car fires, so we hear about them all the time, and they're evident. I'm not saying these battery energy storage systems are going to be the worst thing in the world. I just want to make sure that the language or anything that we write to put in it stays at the best a possibility for when these events happen for us and for whatever we decide for the community. The best protection for them.
Have you read this proposed
No,
ordinance?
sir, I have not. It was the first time I heard it while I was sitting in the back of the room.
This
so.
is one of the questions I was gonna ask, sometime or another, we have to start at point A.
Sure.
And we gonna end up at point Z.
Sure.
All right. And language that we put in these things can be changed.
Right.
And hopefully we get somebody with the knowledge that you've got that will help us in the future.
Love to.
Because we don't want anybody to get hurt.
No.
So, especially firefighters, but, we don't want anybody.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm not a professional, and I think we may have one or two here in the board that have a lot more knowledge than I do.
Yes, sir.
But, we rely on professionals to help us. So, from this document to the next document, I hope that we get people like you to help us.
Be happy to see what I can do for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Do
just
we have any member of any fire department review this ordinance?
We sent it out to the Henderson Fire Department, which it's not their argument or their battle to pick. But we also sent it out to the Niagara and I believe the Zion Fire.
Okay. And where'd you say you were from?
I'm with Zion, sir. I had not
Okay.
read it.
Okay. Did you get feedback from those people?
Not directly on the ordinance. I met with those folks last Friday, kind of discussed to go through a similar presentation. We had verbal feedback.
Okay. Any other questions for this gentleman?
I have one more.
Yes, of
I think
course.
there's one more. Is Zion equipped to handle one of these?
Oh, absolutely not.
So you'd have to call in mutual aid to everywhere? Within the county and?
Depending on the size of the incident, there'd be so many, I could go over so many worst case ifs and with it, but no, we're absolutely not. Just atmospheric monitoring alone. Let's just make it simple. We have a large plume of gas that was escaping out of one of these. And I wanted to measure 330 feet away, which would be ERG, or a third of a mile away, and a mile away. We have 1 meter. Right, so we don't have the equipment that goes with that, you know. And then, of course, for quantities of fire or fire attack, we were in the event of trying to extinguish one of these. You know, is there water supply out there in that area? Hydrant capable enough to supply enough gallons of water? Or do we have the proper amount of hose? I can do this all day. Hose streams and all the vents. Anything you can lead up to, it all have to be, you know, what we would consider a pre-planned event.
So if you had something that was out there burning for 2 weeks, you gotta have somebody there on site the entire time, right?
That is correct.
Can you handle that?
No.
This is not a thing on Zion. I'm
No,
just saying.
no. Yeah, we're a small county department. Yeah, we're.
Understand that we're gonna have to call in mutual aid from
Yeah.
the county and the city, which leaves other places unprotected potentially.
And obviously, there's money exchanges when you call the city. You know, those guys get paid. You know, all the volunteers are doing this for free. So, and then taken away from jobs. You know, it'd be an event that, you know, it'd be a pretty big event for Henderson County. What's that?
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
More questions? Anyone else have questions for this gentleman? We can bring him back if we need to. Thank you very much,
Okay, no,
sir.
thank you, Chairman. Appreciate it, sir.
Let's see. Do we have anybody here this evening who would like to speak in favor of this ordinance?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Your name, sir?
My name is Gregory Dutton. I am an attorney with Frost Brown Todd here in Kentucky, and I am a representative of the Yellowthroat Battery Storage Project, which has been proposed for here in Henderson County.
Okay, and your address?
My address is 400 West Market, Louisville, Kentucky.
You promise to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do, sir.
Thank you. What can you tell us about this?
Well, I'm going to start briefly by introducing myself as well as our team, and then the project developer here has some brief comments, and then I think we're happy to take some questions, because it sounds like there are a lot of questions tonight. We may be able to help with some, probably not all, but at least we can try. We have here tonight, and as I said, this is on behalf of the Yellowthroat Battery Storage Project. We've got James Hingston, who is the developer on this project, Blair Debin, who is a technical engineer on the project, and then Tiffany Allison, who is part of our communications team. Mr. Hingston has prepared some initial remarks on behalf of the project, so if I can, I'd like to hand the microphone off to him at this time.
Thank you. Your name again, sir?
James Hingston.
Address?
3822 East First Street, Long Beach, California.
And do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. So as Greg mentioned, my name is James Hingston, and I'm the lead developer representing the Yellowthroat Energy Storage Project here in Henderson. So far in our development efforts, we've met several times with the planning department. We've been before this planning commission for the rezoning that Mr. Bishop mentioned earlier. We've met with members of the local fire departments and neighbors at our project site. We'd like to thank you all for your diligence through this zoning ordinance process. We know that these projects are new for a lot of folks, so there's a lot to dig through. We are eager to see this ordinance adopted. We do support the ordinance and the changes that have been kind of discussed to amend it here tonight. We're eager to see this adopted so that we can come back before this body with our rezoning applications, our site plan application, and then go to the Board of Zoning Adjustments with our CUP application. All of those need to happen before we would be able to go forward building a project. And also as part of NFPA 855, which is included in the ordinance per Mr. Grubb's recommendation, we would need to have an emergency response plan in place that we worked on and then got sign off from the local fire departments with, that would detail out how to respond to any emergency event at our project site. NFPA 855 also includes, which I think Mr. Grubb went over a little bit of, requirements for training fire departments prior to commissioning of a project and then annually thereafter, so that you're incorporating any turnover in the local fire department or changes to best practices that have been established throughout the industry. So like I said, we do support this ordinance. It's been written. We're on board with all the changes that have been discussed by all of you guys. As it relates to this ordinance, we do have one recommendation that does not have to do with all the technical and safety information that's been gone over so far, but it's in section 32.15 of the ordinance, laying out some of the timelines for permit approvals. 32.15 lists a 12-month expiration to the CUP and site plan approvals if the project has not received building permits and commenced construction. And I just wanted to point out that utility scale energy projects, whether it's batteries, solar, or natural gas, they are unique from other land uses in that they go through a multi-year interconnection process with the grid operator, and that process is infamously becoming fraught with delays. And to take our project as an example, our Yellowthroat project was first submitted to MISO, the grid operator, in 2021. We're still in the first of 3 study phases, and the initial estimate that we were given for that first study phase was 6 months, and it's been over 3 years at this point. So there's delays that can happen that are totally outside of a developer's control, that any sort of local discretionary approvals would have expired because you're waiting to get through this interconnection process with the grid operator. So with that change and the changes that have been discussed here today, we're confident that this ordinance will be improved and be effective to protect this community. We look forward to...
Excuse me, sir. What change you proposing?
Oh, sorry. We would with respect to that unique aspect to battery storage and other energy projects, we would say increase that to 24 months from 12 months.
May I address it there? 12 months was specifically chosen because of the change in the battery technology. So as James said, and we all know, within 24 months, the battery that they start out with can be a completely different product or battery. So we would request that the Plan Commission leave that at 12 months.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Got it. So with all the changes discussed today, our recommendation, we do support this ordinance as it was presented today. And we're happy to continue to work with everyone out here in the community and continue to answer questions. So thank you guys.
What was the name of the project again? Yellowthroat?
Yellowthroat, yeah.
Okay, are you referring to the actual battery energy storage system or some kind of a generation project?
I'm here representing the actual, it would not be a generating facility, it would be a storage facility.
Okay.
So we would not be associated with any sort of solar project, wind project, any electric generating project.
So where would the power come from?
We would interconnect to a substation, and then we would pull power directly from the grid, and then that would be how the batteries would charge, and then they could discharge. We would have a transmission line from our project batteries to that substation, and the substation that we would use, I'm going to try not to get too much into specifics about our project just because we're not on the agenda here tonight, but it's an existing substation that Big River's just built there on 20th Austin Road.
Right, and so the power's there, you're going to take the power into your battery and then take it out of your battery? What's the gain?
In general, we would have a long-term contract with the utility, and they would basically be able to use that capacity as they see fit to serve their ratepayers. So
okay.
We would get compensated by the utility, and then they would use the capacity to serve their ratepayers.
So I think maybe to answer Chairman Dixon's question, I think just in layman's terms, your system is there to help during peak demand.
Yeah.
You would actually be able to provide power to the utility to meet the peak demand moments.
That's
if I can.
Sure.
It's very inexpensive to charge these batteries at night when everyone's asleep and no one's using the energy. It's very inexpensive for the utility to produce the energy when no one's using it. And then, like you said, peak demand when everyone's waking up in the morning. If you look at a curve of energy, it's usually highest in the morning when everyone is waking up, turning on their lights, turning on businesses. Then at that time, you could put the energy back on the grid, and that would help to subsidize the cost of the energy for everyone in the community.
Would it be safe to describe it as buy low, sell high?
That's accurate.
Okay. Thank you.
For example, you said that y'all from Owensboro got had y'all got one of them up and running now? A unit like that in process or running right now?
We have our most advanced projects are in California, Blair. I'm not sure if you've had more involvement with those from our company's perspective. In Kentucky, there's batteries that are up and running. It's just they're not our batteries.
So the one in Owensboro not up and running right now.
In Owensboro?
Well, I thought y'all said y'all were from Owensboro too.
No, sorry. I'm
Okay.
with Tenasco, which is an Omaha, Nebraska-based
Okay.
company. Yeah.
Yeah, there are several other projects that are building battery storage projects around the state right now. I know LG&E owns one, and EKPC owns one, and then there are several solar projects that have battery storage projects associated with them. But the folks that are here tonight, we don't have a project existing in Kentucky.
Okay, and the plan is to use Big River's power.
We would interconnect through Big River's substation, and then Big Rivers would potentially be one of the utilities that we would contract with, but we're still a bit ways from kind of finalizing any sort of contract. It's not necessarily going to be Big Rivers who controls the actual power flow, but we would be using their infrastructure.
Okay. This is not connected, and you noted this is not connected to a wind power project or a solar power
no
project?
No generating facility, no.
Okay. Other questions for these gentlemen?
I have some questions.
Yes, of course.
I'm big on safety. If there were an incident, what is the company response time to having boots on the ground here?
Yeah.
Because I believe that previously it had been stated that you don't have someone on site all the time. It's monitored remotely.
Yeah, so let me just say that we don't have a site plan here tonight. So until we have a site plan, I don't know that we can answer any of these questions super specifically because we haven't talked with staff about the specific technology that's going to be used, where it's going to be located, the buffers, some of those things. I think we have to work through some of those before we can speak to really specifics about the project, especially since tonight's really about the ordinance.
Other questions?
I would like to ask a question. Would it put you all through a lot of trouble if this were tabled for a month? Because we've received a lot of information and a lot of proposed amendments to this ordinance, some of which I think are entirely justified.
Yeah.
I would like to see this thing amended and come back before this commission.
I think that,
yeah.
How much trouble is that going to cause you?
I would say 1 month obviously isn't gonna, kill our project, but it seems like there's still a lot to go over. So I don't know if there would be a way to work with Brian on a way, or the planning department on a way for both when our project is ready to come forth with an application, if there's no ordinance in place, to maybe have us still come through, but be held to the, basically what's being talked about in the ordinance, even if the bureaucratic process
To
hasn't.
relinquish your grandfathering.
Yeah.
They're not grandfathered.
No, we wouldn't be grandfathered in.
no, what we're trying to do is, part of the reason that we're supporting the ordinance, and I think Ms. Towers here brought up several good comments about sort of the editorials and some of those things. What we're trying to do is just figure out what is the framework to move forward, right? Because after this, we still have to do a rezoning, the site plan, and the CUP. So we have 3 more things to get approved by this body before the project can go to the state siting board where the transmission line is reviewed. So, I think a month we can work with, but our goal is to just figure out what is the framework that we should work with this community and this staff in terms of moving forward to some of the other steps, where we'll get into some of the specific questions about safety and fire and what is response time and some of those questions. At this point, it's hard for us to answer that until we get further. So that's just our objective.
What is going to be the process we go through to amend this? This rewrite's going to take more than a month.
The process would probably be a little lengthy. I think we would go back and review the record, make the edits that we could based on that. And then, of course, we have to include Mr. Grubb as the county's consultant and primary author. It's a lot of review and going back and check. A lot of editing.
Okay, I think as we started this discussion, we had 3 options.
Correct, sir.
To approve it as presented, or to recommend it to fiscal court that they approve it as presented, to recommend to fiscal court that they approve it with amendments, or to recommend to fiscal court that they not approve. Correct? Okay. I want to make sure everybody had that clear. Other questions?
Well, I know Tenaska's been in business, I guess, for a pretty good while. I've been hearing about you.
Yeah.
How many other projects do y'all have ongoing at this time? Is this the only one of this magnitude?
No, I'm personally working on probably 5 projects of this scale in the Midwest, and that's part of a broader portfolio that probably has between 10 and 15.
All right.
And then we have other portfolios in other parts of the country, the Pacific Northwest and California I mentioned as well. So
Actually in operation?
those are mostly further ahead in development, but not all operational now.
Okay. What was the process that y'all went through in those other metropolitan areas to get zoning regs in place?
Yeah, I would say not everywhere has a zoning ordinance. Some places you can, if you have industrial land, you might be able to do this as a permitted use. And so it's pretty different everywhere. I'm sure, Greg, you can speak to other places you worked in Kentucky in particular. Most of what I'm talking about is in other states throughout the Midwest, but yeah, it's different. In some places have ordinances. I think we see NFPA 855 being adopted in ordinances kind of across the board now as the fire code that's kind of universally accepted. So yeah, I think we're seeing a lot more ordinances adopted recently, but not everywhere has them in place.
I don't believe there's any place in Kentucky that has an ordinance. I think this body's at the tip of the spear for the Commonwealth. There are other places that don't have planning and zoning, that have projects that are being built. There are other communities that have planning and zoning where they're looking at how to handle these. There's at least one that I know of where I think they're gonna just handle it under their existing ordinance and look at it as it's basically an I-1 or I-2 sort of utility use. But I think, what you're doing here is certainly the tip of the spear in terms of the detail that you're getting into for the Commonwealth.
I think that's a good thing. Any other questions for these gentlemen? Would you like to present anything else? Anything else you'd like to share?
I would say not at this time. As we mentioned, we'll be back. We won't be able to, if you guys pass an ordinance, it just sets out what we have to do to come back to you guys.
And it still has to go to the fiscal court.
Right.
And then once it's passed, then we would be back.
There's still a lot of steps that, for the ordinance that would have to happen, and then for our project in particular, there's a lot of steps that would have to happen before we even get close to breaking ground or something like that. So,
thank you all.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else here this evening who would like to speak in favor of these proposed amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I rise not to speak in favor or opposition, but I do have a question of the commission.
Very good. Your name, sir?
Henderson County Judge Executive Brad Schneider.
Your address?
1552 Autumn Lane, Henderson, Kentucky.
You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Very good. Thank you.
Quick question of the commission. Did you just pass a battery energy storage system ordinance for the city?
I believe that is correct.
That is correct. A much simpler version.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Anyone else here that like to have the question or like to speak in favor or speak against? Yes, ma'am. Your name, ma'am?
My name is Deirdre McConaughey,
Your address?
10512 Airline Road, Henderson.
You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
I am standing here not to speak. I'm conflicted. I'm not here to speak in favor or against because I am genuinely trying to keep an open mind about this project. Not just for the singular project, because I'm in favor of the kind of ongoing changes in the energy for the better good. But I venture to say, the unique position of being the only person in this room that shares a property line on two sides with this facility. So it affects me in a big way. I have neighbors, but this is my farm. And I met earlier with the team, and I've met with them before, and we are trying to have, I think, open, productive conversations. And I have the exact same list that was discussed here in different matters that I want them to address: screening, lighting, noise, safety. But another one that I have is that this will affect my farm immediately in terms of when it gets placed. Now, you cannot necessarily, as I understand it, sue for aesthetics, but the view is wrecked by the substation already. And now, because that's zoned heavy industrial, then we'll put another heavy industrial right next to it. Well, next thing you know, my farm is next to heavy industrial. So that concerns me, because when you mash together heavy industrial with agricultural, that's an impact on me, my generation, my son, who used to come to these planning committee meetings, and it limits my options for what I do with my farm. While I might not be selling lots today, my ability to sell lots or develop the property or maybe have a park or whatever I would choose to do is limited by this facility, because people don't want to back up to a chain link fence. Sorry, I can't visualize that. Or have the risk of fire or so forth and so on. So I'm speaking truthfully, really trying to keep an open mind. I look forward to learning more. I'm trying really hard to do my own research. And that has mixed results that it brings me. Some places vote it down. Some places tuck it in an urban environment. Or, there are lots of solutions. But for me, I share two sides. And so think of me and my beautiful farm that my parents drove. I have a driveway that's over 1/4 of a mile long because we didn't want to be up on the road. We wanted to be back in the quiet of the farm. So I'll come and listen. I appreciate what the questions are that you are all asking, because this technology is new enough that you're going to be approving something. Be careful what you buy. Be careful what you approve. I know that. But I will continue coming to meetings and appreciate your questions and your inquiry and your own research that you do. So, any questions for me being a farm owner adjacent?
Any questions for this?
Yes, ma'am. Where your farm located?
So, my driveway comes off of Airline Road. And it's just past, if you go just past Toy Anthoston, I'm the first long driveway. This is so country. I just love it.
But out in the country.
Yes, sir.
This is going to be located out in the country.
Yes, sir.
Ms. McCarthy.
Thank you.
Could you describe
Yes.
which one's yours?
I wish
Yeah.
I don't have any, I don't have any visuals. So, that's really lovely. So, this is I'm getting oriented. This is Airline Road. Right? And, hey, James?
Yeah.
You can also help orient us. Oh, here's my farm.
Yeah.
I
Ms.
found
McCarthy,
it.
I'm sorry, could you
Oh.
use the laser pointer and then speak into the microphone so we get it into the record?
Where's the laser?
Right.
And you want me to point on this?
Yes, see if it, it'll show up there.
Is that it? Have I got a cursor? I don't know.
No, that's me.
Is this yours right here? No. That thing with the circle is a pond?
Yeah.
Yes. And That's right, all of this, and I'm
Oh,
sorry.
you're good. Well, it's just hard for the minutes.
Okay, well, you can make it up on that part. But anyway, just gonna put it, James, come here a minute, just real quickly, so maybe you can run the motion.
Yeah.
Show them exactly where your thing is gonna be and where I am.
Yes, so Yellow
Now
Throat
you
is
can
the
go back to
highlighted
mine.
lot here.
Oh, good.
If you remember with the rezoning that we did, this was the location. And Ms. LaFonta's property is back here. and up here
It's
on these
all of
sides,
this,
yes.
that's one side where I am adjacent, that would be, I can't get on the north, southwest. And then this is also, that entire side is your property line. And this is my house, and that's a pond. And so when my son maybe decides to come and build a house, you know, now he'll be looking at a battery storage facility.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else here this evening like to address this proposal in any fashion? Yes, please, sir. Your name, sir?
My name's James Franks. I live at 2301 Toy in Boston, which if Mr. Bishop will control that map and drag it down where you can see my property. I'm on the corner of Toy and Thelston on the Antholston side and Airline Road Junction.
Okay. You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, sir?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Please proceed.
So I would just like to say a few things. When I first heard about this, I really didn't know what to think. I'm a volunteer fireman. I joined the local fire department in Zion in 2021. I'm a state certified fireman. I am not paid. I donate my time to the community for the better of my neighbors and my community. Since joining Zion, I've also joined Niagara. Both of those departments are going to be the ones that respond to this location or any location affected. One other tidbit of information, which might not mean nothing now, but I want you to know, during heavy rains or flash floods, I am also one of 11 residents that are trapped. I am the only first responder that's trapped with those 11 residents, and I am not an EMT. That's an ongoing separate situation that I've been discussing with officials to try to correct. So I wanted you to know that, though, because Mr. Watson has told us a lot tonight about thermal runaway, evacuation zones, and there's a lot of things we don't know about plume clouds and vapors, right? So myself, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather. I still have some children that live at home. And if there's a shelter-in-place order, those things have to come into play because they potentially could be death sentences, right? So a few things that I wanted to share with you was back in September, I was also invited to another meeting with the Yellow Throat Project team. It was quite a large team and very impressive. We met up at the dispatch center, the EOC, and they put on a presentation with some engineers. And in that meeting, every chief in the county volunteered. The city manager, Buzzy, let's see who else I can recall. All of the city paid firemen and fire chiefs were present, none of which were commenting, but they were there to take in the information. The questions were asked repeatedly, and some of which I'm sure there's some emails floating around. What is your response time if we allow you to build this facility and something happens? One of the answers given was, we don't know. We're going to hire a local contractor to respond. One of the questions answered was, what do our firemen do when they respond? One of the answers given to us was, firemen don't need to enter the property. Well, if that person you've hired, that contractor, is in need, then we have to enter. There was just so much contradiction in the information given to the department that it really led to a very unproductive meeting that I got up and left, personally. And that was frustrating because, again, that's my home. That's my life investment. It's the future for my children. It's not as nice as your farm, which is pretty impressive, but it's mine. Since Pratt come to town, which is great, you know, I'm also a small business owner. I don't want to push out business, but I got to be realistic. They've built the substation. It's needed. They've well lit it. They've put up a 300-foot communication tower, which has been malfunctioning and lighting my house up. The FCC has given them permission to turn off until they fix it. There's some hurdles with anything, right? Anytime we try to move forward as a community, we're going to encounter issues. The problem is, with the Yellow Throat project, we've asked repeatedly, and you guys aren't answering. We could get behind you, but you have to tell us what you want to put in there and how you're going to help us protect us. Because these gentlemen and these ladies aren't from Henderson, Kentucky. They aren't residents of our state. So it's kind of hard for us to just, jump for joy. I'm going to request you tonight to say no to any and all commercial BESS systems for now. Henderson County and Henderson City is not ready. Henderson City was approved tonight for, I believe, an M2 zoning. I don't know what M2 zoning means. You do. But I'm sure it's not Torianthos, and surely to God. There's not a major water line down that road. You have 2 volunteer departments by, even though I think I'm great and I got some great fellows behind me, we all have day jobs. And the strain it would put on the city is just, they're not ready for that. Those guys didn't sign up for it and they aren't trained yet. The standards aren't in place. That's the only thoughts and comments I wanted to share with you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for this gentleman?
I have a question.
Yes.
How far away are you?
I believe it was 5,000 feet or something around that.
Close to it.
Brian, do you have that information?
We can measure it on GPS. I can, give me 1 second.
I was given that information at the September meeting, which I was quite impressed by. I didn't know they knew I was coming, but they were ready.
So in your capacity as a firefighter, do you think notifying people within the 1 mile radius of these proceedings, should it be larger, knowing that there's potential?
One of the questions that has not been answered is what's the plume and what's the, we could easily work with these folks, but they're not sharing information because they want to limit themselves. That's a business tactic. I get that. But they know 1 or 2 options of what they're wanting to go with. As a Henderson resident, I can't support someone coming in from out of state wanting us to be a guinea pig. This could be our Chernobyl. We don't want that. Let's get it right from the beginning, and let's get the framework in place to keep that from happening. I understand there's multiple steps and other meetings that have to take place and site plans, but we all know once you get the ball rolling, it's pretty easy to keep it rolling. So if they can't answer the questions of the community now, I don't think they're going to be able to later.
Mr. Taser, it's roughly 0.68 miles from the intersection of where he lives to the entrance of the property.
Is that a direct line or is it?
Straight up the road.
Straight up
And
the
then
road.
it would probably be similar, maybe a little more, if you were to measure diagonally as a crow flies. But 3,600 feet gets you close.
Any other questions for this gentleman? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address this issue? Would anyone like to respond to what's been said? Does the commission have any further questions of anyone? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The last thing that we want to do is leave this body with any sort of impression that we're not happy to answer questions. We understand that there are a lot of questions about the specifics of the Yellow Throat project and about BESS in general. We were trying to avoid answering specific questions tonight in particular because our understanding was the purpose of tonight was about the ordinance. And we didn't feel like it was going to be productive to get into our specific project, frankly, before we have settled on the specifics of it with the staff, which the staff has asked us, come to us with specifics when you come to us with the site plan. So we're trying to make sure that when we come to the staff that we have the concrete answers to give them. And so we're trying to not hedge our bets on situations like this and give you information that we may decide is wrong later or that we need to change. We're trying to give you the right information the first time that we provide it. So I apologize if it seems like we're trying to not provide information. That is absolutely not what we're trying to do. The meeting that the gentleman referenced, part of the reason that we brought in experts for that meeting was to answer questions. Obviously, it wasn't satisfactory to everybody, but we are happy to answer questions, specific questions. We expect to be in front of this body several more times for the explicit purpose of answering any and all questions about our particular project. But we were trying to focus simply on the ordinance this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for this gentleman? Okay. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add? We've had a very interesting discussion. But I'm happy to hear more.
Yep. Got 16 minutes. 15 and a half.
Anyone, no one has anything to add? Okay. I guess we will entertain a motion in regard to the county zoning text amendments concerning battery energy storage systems as presented. You might remember the options that were put before us as we began the discussion.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question of Mr. Bishop?
By all means.
What kind of time frame would you expect for a re-rate?
I think a minimum would be the 30 days. Just based on everything that's going on and coordinating with Gary. So I would request at least 30 days.
I would hope that if it should come to, reevaluation of this and rewriting and et cetera, that we